If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer from below. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. He's got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Mike Randle. He does great work over at FTN Network. He's going to be joining me to talk about how he's gauging these conference tournaments, both from a game-to-game and in a futures perspective. He does a little bit of both, and he does so all so well. We're going to be chatting about that since I really don't have any time to be able to answer questions / just be able to go through the comments today due to the fact that we've got a pretty big board for this college basketball Thursday. I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every single game on the card as we hit some bank shots, as that's going to be about 2.5 hours of college basketball breakdown games there, and this is going to be about a 3-hour podcast. So we'll try to hit those questions for you guys tomorrow, and if you do have anything that you want answered on this podcast, question, comment, segment, idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter / X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline, and the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Like I said a second ago, we're going to answer more of the Twitter questions, what have you, on the podcast tomorrow. So let's take a look back at everything that we did see on Wednesday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Bad read for me on the DK Network, right, to pick on the best cover team in all of college basketball, except for, well, they were anything but that on this college basketball Wednesday. As for Minnesota, they get lambasted at home. They lose by double figures to Indiana, this by a count of 70-58, and for Minnesota, they just could not hit water if they fell out of a boat. 5 of 26 from three-point range, and just legitimately watching that game, they were not taking very good shots at all, so that was a lot of their own doing. And for Indiana, they just completely owned them in the paint. Indiana also went 5 of 8 from three-point range. They were able to get a really good performance out of Cleo Ware, 26 points, 11 rebounds. For Indiana, they actually lose the battle on the glass by a count of 36-26, but Minnesota couldn't do anything with their second chances as they just kept on turning the ball over left and right. 18 turnovers for them, 13 for Indiana, and all of a sudden Indiana has won back-to-back road games. They're going to need to win out to be able to make the NCAA tournament, but nice triumph here. And for Minnesota, they dropped to 24-6 against the spread thus far this season. Now, if you, like me, had the points with South Carolina, this was just absolutely brutal. They did a nice job clawing their way back within the number. It looked like they had a dunk in the end to be able to cover it, but it was waved off. 66-59. Tennessee has a lot of places about a 6 or so point favorite. They're able to get the cover here as Dalton Connect. He was connecting. He gave the Tennessee Volunteers in this one 26 points, and for Tennessee, they win their turnover battle by kind of 10-8. They do lose the rebound battle 40-38 as Colin Murray Boyles just continues to be amazing. I continue to talk about him on this show. Rightfully so. 11 points, 11 boards, 3 blocks, and for South Carolina, this on cover drops them to now 21-9 against the spread. So they've still been relatively solid, but for this Tennessee team, they did a nice job hitting their free throws, going 19 of 22 at the charity stripe. And for South Carolina, you can say what you want about the late game shenanigans, they cover this game if they go better than 5 of 10 at the free throw line. UConn with her first win over a ranked team in a true road game, which doesn't count like the Gonzaga team or what have you from earlier in the season, since 2014. 74-67 the final. Now, Tyler Kolek was not in the fold for Marquette, and you sort of knew that this was going to be coming, but for Marquette, they honestly didn't play bad. They did shoot, though, 9 of 16 at the free throw line. Marquette wins the turnover battle 13-9, but here's where they lost the game on glass. Oso Guerrero was back after he missed the previous game, 16 points, 8 rebounds, but for Marquette, Donovan Clingan, 12 boards, 4 blocks. Alex Caraman, he supplies 23 points, and this UConn team just all season long, they've been a relatively solid cover team for this UConn bunch against the spread. They're now 19-11, and they're able to get the job done once again. A team that's rapidly becoming one of your best under teams in all of college basketball is Villanova. Villanova has now given up 66 points or fewer in all but one of their games since the beginning of the month of February. They do lose in this one, and obviously they don't cover against Seton Hall by kind of 66-56, but this Villanova team, now 19 unders to just 11 overs thus far this season. They couldn't get anything going on offense. They go 9-27 from three-point range against a Seton Hall bunch. They went more around 9-23 from distance, and Jaden Bediako was able to own things down low. 11 points, 12 rebounds. Kadari Richmond set sheets up for 20 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds for him, and for both of these teams, 11 turnovers. But Villanova certainly having a little bit of a change in tempo, and that is leading to quite a few more unders. And hey, 72-66, the Big East, which is full of unders. All three games did go under out there in the Big East on Wednesday, and then on Wednesday in terms of the ranked action. How about Iowa State being able to storm back against BYU? Now, they are unable to cover the spread. This was a closing number more in that neighborhood, about 7.5, but Iowa State, they're able to get the job done by kind of 68-63 after they were down double figures throughout much of this game. For BYU, they go just 8 of 29 from three-point range. Meanwhile, this Iowa State team, they're able to go 6 of 18 from three, and the man that was able to bail them out, how about getting 18 points off the bench from Curtis Jones, who he was able to really light it up late in this game, 3 of 7 from three-point range, while Taymon Lipsby, 19 points, 5 steals. He does his part as Iowa State. They win this game because they win the turnover battle 17-6. So very impressive there for Kentucky. They continue to be really your best over team in all of college basketball. They and Alabama both 22 overs to just 8 unders thus far this season. No cover here for Kentucky, but they do get the win by kind of 93-77. As for Vanderbilt, Tyron Lawrence was able to chip in their 23 points, and for Vanderbilt, they go just 5 of 23 from three-point range, but they hold in there because they win the turnover battle. For Kentucky, they were able to win the rebound battle 44-32, and once again, another good performance here out of Antonio Reeves. 20 points as Kentucky, they're able to go 11 of 27 overall from three-point range. Houston, they're able to get a nice win, and in the closing number, about 8.5, not able to quite get there against Central Florida, 67-59 the final, but another under for them. As for Houston, they just continue to absolutely lock you down on defense. LJ Cryer was able to supply 25 points, and Jamal Shedd, he's really been able to find it in terms of his scoring groove as well. 16 points, 8 assists, only 2 turnovers out of him, and for Central Florida, that's where they lost this game. They had 18 turnovers. Houston, they had just 10. Houston, they actually lose the rebound battle by kind of 32-31. This is despite the fact that Central Florida did not have anyone that gave you north of 5 rebounds in that one, but I mean, certainly a good showing there. We had the NEC start up with regards to their quarterfinals, and in the Northeastern Conference, we saw a lot of chalk in this one. St. Gerard, they do go down to Wagner by kind of 60-57, but that was a line of about 5.5. Wagner, they're able to survive and advance. Meanwhile, Lemoyne, they just absolutely lay it on. Fairleigh Dickinson 82-61, who became a very good under team towards back half of the season. Merrimack, the old Merrymen, 72-66, no cover against Long Island, and they've been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball. And Central Connecticut as a giant favorite, not able to cover, but they're able to survive and advance themselves. And then out there in the OVC, where we have seen a few teams be very good to the under, including Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois has been a supreme team to the under all season long, and they close up shop with their season. 17 unders, 9 overs, and 2 pushes. They lose to SIU Edwardsville by kind of 68-57. Meanwhile, Tennessee State against Southern Indiana, they win by kind of 78-64. This was a closing total of 143.5. So you saw both of those games go under the total for Tennessee State. They've been a little bit of an up and down team all season long, but certainly those under teams out there in the OVC, certainly something that you do want to be taking note of, and you do want to be taking note of this bunch as well. They've been one of your best cover teams in all of college basketball, and for the Itsy Bitsy Spiders of Richmond, they're able to do it once again. It's 4.5 point favorites. They do take down St. Joe's by kind of 73-66, and for Richmond, they're now 21-8-1 against the spread. They hold St. Joe's to shooting just 30% from three-point range, as St. Joe's, they did a relatively solid job on the glass. They won that battle 36-33, but for Richmond, one of the best teams at not turning the ball over in all of college basketball, they win that turnover battle by kind of 14-9 as well, so that's able to get them to the window. SMU, by the way, they've now given up at least 70 points in all but one of their games since the beginning of the month of February. They do not get the cover against East Carolina. They're able to outlast by kind of 80-77, but a little bit of hairbraininess there. And for Florida Atlantic, it's been a tumultuous up and down season for them, but they take down North Texas 80-76. Very strange to see a game like this from North Texas, as they went 18 of 20 at the free throw line, but Florida Atlantic, they were just connecting on all their shots. 23 of 30 at the free throw line, 7 of 15 from three-point range, and John L. Davis right now one of the best scorers in all of college basketball. He supplies the team with 29 points. One of the most harebrained lines of the night was McNeese laying 16.5 to New Orleans, and it wasn't enough. For McNeese, they get an 81-57 win, going 7-14 from three-point range, while New Orleans, a pretty rough 5 of 21 from distance from them. And it has been a team that just has not been able to find their bearings all season long. So a little bit of brutality out there, and this team has been a relatively solid fade all season long, as you did see New Orleans go just 10 of 17 against the spread to this point. So we shall see what happens moving forward, but that has been a little bit less than savory out there for them. And this team has also been a little bit less than savory against the spread. That'd be West Virginia. They're now 12-18 against the spread as they play out to TCU, and the home court environment could not do them a whole lot of good. I believe that TCU was leading this game wire to wire, 93-81 the final. And for West Virginia, they were able to get some relatively good production down low. They only lose a rebound battle by 1, but TCU goes 11 of 23 from three-point range. You had Emmanuel Miller really cooking in this game, 21 points for TCU. They win the turnover battle by a count of 15-12, and Jesse Edwards, 36 points, 13 rebounds, really good performance. Problem was, he just didn't have a whole heck of a lot of help from his friends, and thus they go down in a fiery heap of smoke. And speaking of going down in a fiery heap of smoke, that's what home underdogs have been doing all season long, and in the last 7 days, boy, it's really not been good for them. Home underdogs, 42-59-1 against the spread. That's a 41.6% hit rate. Meanwhile, if you're looking overall with regards to the totals, it's been a little bit more underwhelming recently. With these conference tournaments, the unders are starting to come through, 167 unders to just 161 overs over the last 7 days. So if you're looking at the entirety of the college basketball season, overs still hitting at about 50.9%, 2,618 overs to 2,521 unders, while home underdogs now hitting at just 48.5%, 703, 746, and 23 against the spread. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Wednesday. Now let's take a look at how to play these conference tournaments and just sort of the feel that we've got for March and how to handicapping with our good friend over there at FDN Network in Mr. Mike Randle. He does such a good job on so many fronts, and he joins me next right here on Chris Goes Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, and now a part of the BC Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man as Mike Randle. He does absolutely terrific work over at FTN, Fade the Noise Network, taking a look at so many different things, whether that be daily NBA, DFS on that front, the college basketball landscape with a podcast of his own, the Screener podcast. You can get that where you find this fine podcast. Does a great job on the NFL front as well, so no doubt taking a look at all the craziness that we're getting this off season, and through all the craziness, this man does a great job staying sane and making us some money, as you're able to follow Mike on Twitter/X at Randle Rant altogether. Mike, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, is there anything better than conference tournament season heading into that first week in March? March is great, but once we get conference tournament seasons, I mean, we know we've arrived, Greg, when I'm sitting there watching Queens versus Florida Gulf Coast at Stetson. That, my friend, is the perfect tip-off to the greatest time of the year.
Oh, I am right there with you, and it is a tremendous time of year as well, because everyone loves the NCAA tournament, and no doubt those first 2 days of the NCAA tournament, they're some of the most exciting of the year. But those who know when it comes to these conference tournaments, because it is intense. It is do or die in these low to mid-major conferences. And that leads me into, I do want to start things off, because everyone has a little bit of a different way of going about things with conference tournament season. Like, I'm just very much a game-to-game guy. I'm not someone that's going to be diving in too much on these outrights to win the conference tournament, what have you, but I'm gauging all these games, looking at the specific spots, and certainly when you get the back-to-backs, I feel like you could get some really good openers. But how do you gauge things this time of year? Are you a little bit more of a futures player, or do you go a little bit more game-to-game?
I love both. I love when I can find a team that I like that I think is very overvalued in the future market, much like a Southern Mississippi here in the Sun Belt, because there's just so many unknowns with Curbelo and the injuries. And then I have a team in James Madison who maybe I'm a little cooler on than most. But I do like the game-to-game as well. I love the neutral court games. I think there's a huge advantage there. You have teams who've played each other twice, or teams that are entering the tournament that are scalding hot that most may not realize. Let's say they have a bad record, but they won 3 of their last 4. So I really do like to balance. I prefer the game to game, but when I see futures that I like, specifically in conference tournaments that I love,
Yep, dabbling into a little bit of everything is always a lot of fun this time of year, and there's a lot of different ways that you are able to slice it. And when it comes to taking a look at these conference tournaments, how do you take a look at things with regards to the data itself? Because as we know, a team that's able to get hot for a few days in March, they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Like, I still go back to 2016 when Holy Cross pretty much ran the table in the Patriot League. They were a sub-500 team that made the NCAA tournament. And it feels like one or two teams every year, they do have a sub-500 record, and they do go into the NCAA tournament. So how do you take a look at things with regards to gauging the season data versus a team that just for a few days are getting hot in March?
Yeah, I'm really looking at those teams who are entering their conference tournaments playing well. I can't get out of my mind, Greg, St. Peter's, who ended up needing to win those last three games to sort of get on a roll going into their tournament. Then, of course, they win their tournament and they play Kentucky, and they upset Kentucky in the first round and almost made it all the way through, of course, to the Final Four. So I love teams that are hot coming in. And I also love teams like, for example, you look in the Sun Belt with Arkansas State. Now, the Sun Belt is played at a neutral site in Pensacola. Arkansas State's a team that's coming in that can shoot a lot of threes under Brian Hodgson, who is the disciple of Nate Oates from Alabama. So those are the type of teams that I like to see because their weakness, Arkansas State, has been defending the three-pointer. But is that going to be as important in a neutral court game? That's my question. So looking for teams that have that high volatility, like a North Florida tonight, for example, who can get hot, and specifically them playing on a neutral court, which may make the game even more wide open with more variance. Those are the teams that draw my eye right now.
And how do you take a look at those teams that they do sort of live and die by the three-point shot? Because I do think that it becomes a little bit more difficult when it comes to a neutral court game. And I do think that what is so interesting is gauging these teams that play up-tempo, but they take a lot of twos, because I do feel like that might be, in a lot of cases, a little bit of a safer bet, because we know when it comes to these neutral court games, when it comes to just games that have different surroundings in general, one of the first things to go is the jump shot. So I do try to look at these teams a little bit more that try to value the 2-point shot, because I do feel like there might be a little bit less, shall we say, unknown with
for
them.
Sure. And it comes down to, when you do your incredible show and all your picks, sometimes you're looking money line versus odds because you're looking at each situation as a separate entity. And that's what I'm doing here. If I see a team that maybe has a lot of variance, and yes, you're right. I mean, you could easily live and die by the three in those neutral court games. But if their value as a future in the conference tournament is so skewed that I say, you know what, there is a chance that this team, because they've been hot lately, maybe they shot the three well against their first-round opponent earlier in the year. If those odds are so high that it's worth a shot, then I'm willing to embrace variance here. And it could be feast or famine, but some teams are going to make a run. And you also look at history within the tournament. There are some conference tournaments where the 1 and 2 seeds rarely meet each other if you look over the last decade. So embracing the neutral court, embracing the variance, and going for it if there's a difference between the value that I see and the odds.
Absolutely. I think that you bring up something so important with that as well. As Mike Randle, who does great work over at FTN Network, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, because when it comes to taking a look at underdogs in these conference tournaments, a lot of times the underdogs I'm going to stay away from are these conference tournaments in which they're played on their home court. Like, I take a look at the Northeast Conference, for example. We don't see a lot of variance there. The Patriot League has been completely controlled by Colgate over the last few years, and I do think that the big elixir to that is the fact that you do have Colgate being able to play all their games on their home court. If you have the 1 seed being able to advance in the NEC tournament, they don't have to hit the road at all. How much do you want to be staying away from more of those underdogs in, say, the Patriot League, as opposed to a conference? I think that this is a good example of it, the Atlantic 10, where it feels like in the Atlantic 10, every single year, there's a whole bunch of upsets.
Perfect example, and it's a great point. The other one that I'll go with as well is not only that situation when you're playing at home, it's very difficult, and that's a huge advantage. But the other one is, look at something like the Ohio Valley, where you end up having teams that get the double bye here. Morehead actually lost out on the 3-way tie for first place. So they now have to play 3 consecutive days. Those are little things that are going to make a huge difference here. So not only playing at home, which of course is great, but how about a team that ends up having to play 3 days in a row because of the way the tournament is structured? I mean, Morehead State tied at a 3-way tie for first place in the Ohio Valley, but now they're going to have to play 3 straight games in a row. Even though it's at a neutral site, that's a disadvantage. So something you can factor into your handicapping.
Yeah, there's no question about it. That is a big disadvantage to them. And I do think that how it affects these teams is going to be a little bit different as well, because I'm so glad that you brought up Morehead State, a team where they do play a little bit lower tempo. So, while no doubt hurts them, you have to play an extra game. That is going to be a detriment to them, and that could end up costing them the chance to be able to go to the NCAA tournament. I think it would affect them a little bit less than a team that you brought up a little bit before in Arkansas State, where they're running it, they're gunning it, they're playing super duper fast. I take a look at a team that's going to be playing next week in the American in Tulane, and if they have to play a bunch of games, that's a team that I would not be in on because they play at one of the fastest tempos in all of college basketball, and they don't necessarily have a lot of depth. When you don't have a lot of depth, then you play up tempo. That always, to me, signals a little bit of a recipe for disaster. How about you take a look at those elements when it comes to these conference tournaments and back-to-backs as well?
Yeah, the depth doesn't really matter to me as much in March Madness because of the breaks. You can play 2 games, you get the break, but it does matter in these tournaments. And you bring up an excellent point. Players you're going to have to go deep into your bench when you have these multiple games back and forth. And you have to look at style. So Morehead, for example, could play Tennessee Martin, who wants to run up and down the floor. In the tournaments, you tend to slow down and you tend to have teams that are going to have to execute in the half court. So the question is, can Morehead then regather after a really tough battle and win the next round? But I agree with you. There are teams that excel at a slow pace that I think are undervalued. And we look at March and look at the NCAA tournament. I am very high on South Carolina. South Carolina has excelled in the half court. They're disciplined. They play hard. And even though they're in the shadow of a Tennessee and a Kentucky and an Alabama and an Auburn, they are really, really dangerous in this tournament, and they're not getting the national recognition. So teams that excel, that play well in the half court, and especially have done well lately, like another example for Arch Madness, how about Northern Iowa? Everyone's talking about the big 3, Indiana State, Bradley, and Drake. Northern Iowa, super well coached by Ben Jacobson, going to be a very tough out as well. So definitely giving an advantage to the teams that you know can excel in the half court, because sure enough, Greg, as these games get closer, the conference tournaments advance to the semis and the finals, you have to be able to score in the half court under pressure. The run and gun is not going to be as big a deal.
And I am so glad that you brought up one of those teams in South Carolina, because they're a team that I've been in on quite a bit this year. I'm sure that you, much like myself, didn't have the world's highest expectations for them, and I don't know if the market has still caught up with them to this point because they were graded so lowly coming into the season, as we do have Mike Randle of FTN Network joining me on Coast to Coast Soups. But I do take a look at that bunch, and I look at what they've done throughout the season, because there's a guy by the name of Colin Murray Boyles. I feel like a lot of people don't know, but I really feel like he's been an X factor for this team. A lot of people don't know, but he was dealing with mono towards the beginning part of the season, missed like 6 or 7 games, and I feel like that's a big reason why they were able to get the job done, but they weren't necessarily dominant early on during the season. I've been able to reach another level here in conference play. How much do you want to take a look at things like that, with the team perhaps declining due to an injury, or in this case ascending, with a guy like Murray Boyles really being able to take hold here in the second half of the season?
Yeah, great call there. Murray Boyles has been fantastic, and I love teams that have those glue guys. And I will take it one step further. Not only players that have people coming back from injury, that's critical, no doubt about it, but also players who fit into roles, teams that have players who can fit into roles. And that's what South Carolina has. Michi Johnson, last 2 games, 25 points and 22 points. And South Carolina had their little bump in the road. They lost to Auburn and LSU, and people were almost waiting, Greg, for them to sort of slide back. But they've recovered. They've won 3 in a row, which means they've now won 10 of their last 12. Not only do they have players returning from health, is battling the mono, like you said, but everyone has a role on this team. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do, and they excel at it. Michi Johnson, if he plays like this, they can absolutely make the Final Four.
Yep, absolutely. Michi Johnson has been a bucket getter, and I mean, he was even last year as well. Problem was South Carolina was just really awful last season, but Lamont Paris has been doing one of the best jobs in all of college basketball. And I do want to talk about a team that is on the decline as well, and it is a bunch that we are going to be seeing on Thursday as well, and that would be our good friends, the Wisconsin Badgers. And I just want to get your thoughts as to what sometimes goes wrong with some of these teams as well, because we're talking about a lot of teams that we do want to be backing, these teams that have been able to ascend. But I take a look at this Wisconsin Badgers team, and I'm someone from the great state of Wisconsin, so I've got a lot of people from my home state that are wondering the exact same question I'm asking you, what the heck has happened? But I do think that they're one of the most interesting cases, because they were a top 10 team going into February, and if they lose this game against Rutgers coming up this week, I mean, they could legitimately be on the bubble at this point.
Yeah, very disappointed in Wisconsin. I have one of my best friends works for the Bucks, so I love Wisconsin, Milwaukee, everything about the state. 16-4, 8-1 after they beat Michigan State at home by 15. They have plummeted since then. You start hearing the rumors, Greg. AJ Storr, 1 foot out. He just transferred in. Maybe he's not happy. Of course, there were bubblings with Greg Gard and some former players years ago with a team. So the question is he somebody who can keep the chemistry alive with Wisconsin? Very disappointed. This team came into this year and they had number 8 in minutes continuity. They had over almost 2.6 years of experience. Everything pointed to a good year, and they're top 20 in average height. So very concerned about Wisconsin. It's almost like the chemistry has fallen apart. You're hearing locker room issues. I mean, those are just rumors, but there has to be something here because Wisconsin looked fantastic. They were ready to roll. They played tough against Tennessee at home early in the year. And then since then, they have just lost 7 of their last 9 games, playing poorly, allowing 91 points to Illinois. Look, Greg, I know they can score, but you can't allow 91 points at home. If you think you're going to make the tournament, that's Wisconsin's game. Very disappointed. The overtime loss away to Iowa hurt. Just a rough patch, and they better get it right because I don't think they're beating Purdue away for the last game. They end up losing 6, 8. They could lose 10 of their last 12 games. No good for Wisconsin.
It has been absolutely remarkable. And how difficult is it to be able to evaluate those sorts of teams this time of year? Because when you take a look at the overall metrics for Wisconsin, when you look at the full season data, there's not a whole ton of red on there. Certainly the defense, it's not as good with regards to a per possession basis as if you were taking a look at like the per game, like 70 points per game. They're certainly less effective than that. They're just bogged down in terms of the actual scoring that they give up because of their slow tempo. But how do you gauge those sort of teams that maybe the metrics don't look too bad, but you can tell that they're just in really rough form?
There are situations where teams have limped into the NCAA tournament and then gotten hot. I mean, how many times have we seen Syracuse make a run where they struggled coming in? But by and large, Greg, I want teams that are playing well. It is very difficult to flip that switch. And I'll go even further. It's difficult to do that if you're not a team with an abundance of talent. And that's not what Wisconsin is. Everyone scores about the same amount. Storr, of course, is the big player. Hepburn has taken a step back this year. Crowell is in foul trouble every single second. I am very hard on teams flipping the switch. We have seen it, but it has to be a team that has a very unique style. And obviously, I don't think Appalachian State is making it unless they win the tournament. But that type of team that's superior at defending the rim, that has a style, a team like that, if they were to flame out early in the conference tournament, could get going because of their unique style. That is a difficult problem for Wisconsin. I would favor a team like Kentucky, even though their defense, you give up over 100 points to Arkansas. That's horrific. But if that's a team that has so much talent, Greg, that if they get the right matchups, they could make a run because they're so superior. Wisconsin does not have.
Yeah, they do not. And you mentioned those teams for Syracuse getting hot at the right time as well. You can say what you want about Jim Boeheim, but Greg Gard is not Jim Boeheim as well. So I think that needs to be taken into account as well. And something that we always take into account is your great work, Mike. You do such great work with the Screen the Screener podcast over at FTN Network. You're a 5-2 player for them, doing some NBA, some college basketball, the NFL, list goes on and on. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, join us over at FTN Fantasy. We got a promo code FTN Hoops, gets you 35% off for bets for the year or daily. We're putting out content. MLB season right around the corner, and I got my college basketball betting show Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and we'll be ready to go like you will, but Greg, I'm sure we'll sleep when we get to April, but we'll have a ton of content and, of course, conference tournament sleepers, all that stuff, bracket reveal. It's the best time of year. Nothing's better than this, so we'll be ready to roll at FTN. Thanks.
It absolutely is. The only difference for me is that there will be no sleep in April because that's when baseball will be going on, and then we'll be hitting the diamond instead. So we're always up. We're always at them. And Mike is a hardworking man that does such a great job on the hardwood every single time he joins the show. Lends such great insight. So big thanks to Mike for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as VSiN makes it. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Mike Randle. He does such a good job taking a look at this tremendous game that we all know and love of college basketball. He does a little bit of everything over there at FTN Network and FTN Bets, whether that be DFS on the NBA and NFL side, taking a look at all things college basketball, and I know he's getting set for baseball season as well. So, big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1, and we are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger conference games that are not a part of conference tournaments first, and then we go to the conference tournament games, and all games are pretty much listed by conference. Like the Sun Belt has the earliest tip time, so you go Sun Belt, and then the Missouri Valley Conference. After that, you got the West Coast Conference and the Horizon League into the Ohio Valley Conference. And then the games at the bottom, these are involving the smaller conferences, the MEAC, the SWAC, and then you get the Atlantic Sun and Patriot League Conference tournament. So that's the way that the order is today. Hopefully that kept things nice and clear for you. And let's get things started with 727, 728 on the betting board. Wisconsin plays us at Rutgers. Rutgers, a 9 to 9.5 point underdog with your total 133. I mean, good grief. I cannot do it with this Wisconsin team. I'm going to use my Wisconsinism here. Cripes, this team has been bad. They have won 2 games straight up since the beginning of the month of February, and I fully recognize this Rutgers team stinks on offense. I mean, they are outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They shoot less than 31% from 3-point range, but you got a Wisconsin team that has really been giving it up. Now, for this Wisconsin team, they have been playing quite a bit better when they've been at home rather than in a road/shoot court environment, but even with that improvement at home, this is a Wisconsin team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 186th in all of college basketball, and they only improved by about 4.8 points per 100 possessions when they are at home. You've got a Rutgers team, meanwhile, they do take a big giant drop-off with their defense when they're away from home. This Rutgers bunch is 8th overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they are giving up 22.7 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, so that is very concerning as well. But when it comes to Rutgers, they've gotten a little bit more on offense recently ever since the Temple transfer Jeremiah Williams has come into the fold. He was injured for pretty much a year and a half, and he's been able to supply the team with 13 points, 4 boards. Now he's only shooting about 22% from 3-point range, so hasn't provided too much of a spark there, but it is a Rutgers team that they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, and with Wisconsin, you know that this team is going to be relatively smart with the way that they don't really beat themselves on offense. They only turn the ball over 9.8 times per contest. That is a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. They still play at a rate that is well below the top 310 in terms of total possessions per game as well. So it is a very slow and controlled bunch, and they are 44th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, scoring 13 more points per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. But AJ Storr shot north of 40% from 3-point range last season at St. John's. He's only shooting about 30.5% this season. You've got Tyler Wall, Stephen Krall. These two guys have been able to combine for 13 rebounds per game, and legitimately, Wisconsin has not been a bad rebound rate team. And if you look at the overall metrics of Wisconsin in terms of offense, in terms of rebounding, they're a solid team. They're 42nd in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate. They're going to be matched up with Cliffon Marui, who gives you 2.5 blocks per contest, 9+ boards, but Rutgers overall just 243rd in all of college basketball in regards to rebound rate. But I really do think that the recent form needs to be taken into account with this Wisconsin team, and for Wisconsin, they have allowed at least 70 points in each of their last 4 games, and for this Wisconsin unit, they gave up 78 to the sad and pathetic Rutgers team last time these two teams played, and for that matter, Wisconsin has given up at least 70 points in all but one of their games ever since the beginning of the month of February. Now, I did think that this game is going to be bogged down with the scoring. I don't think that Rutgers is going to duplicate the 10 of 17 3-point shooting that they had the last time around, but this is a Wisconsin unit well outside the top 260 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Rutgers team that they themselves do leave a little bit of something with regards to being able to guard the perimeter, and this is a Wisconsin team that shoots it much better from 3-point range at home rather than on the road. But even with that, I did set my total 129. I think that Wisconsin is going to have a little bit of a tough time scoring on this Rutgers team, and well, Rutgers is offensively challenged, but I just can't lay this number with Wisconsin. Set my line at 7. I'm going to be taking the points with Rutgers, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under as well. 729, 730 on the betting board. UAB, it's a road face-off against Temple. We give our to Lane Kiffin. Go well, says Temple. A 2 to 2.5 point underdog. Your total between 145.5 and 146. I made UAB a favorite of 4.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, UAB coming off of just one of the most ghastly performances that you're going to find against Memphis, scoring 61 points in the first half and less than 25 in the second half. I've never seen anything quite like it, but for UAB, they're relatively solid at being able to guard along the perimeter, and they have a better 2-point defense than the Temple team. Temple about 196th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this UAB bunch, they're more around about 180th, and that's big because while UAB has really struggled with their 3-point shooting defense, UAB is allowing teams overall to shoot about 35.6% from 3, which strangely actually drops to 33.3% from distance away from home. Away from home, they've been a perfectly okay perimeter defense. At home, they've been absolutely terrible, but they get to go up against a Temple team that just has not been able to find it from 3-point range all season long. I like what Isaiah Miller is able to bring to the table. He's done a solid job being able to give this team 15 plus points per contest. He gives you 4 plus assists, gives you a good honest effort, and for Temple, you've got a few guys that are able to pound the boards for the team. You've gotten about 6 rebounds, 12.5 points per game out of Jordan Riley. You've also been able to get nearly 6 boards per contest out of Steve Settle as well, but for this Temple team, they are outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, UAB, their main form of offense has been the fact that they have been able to generate those second chances. They're a top 45 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound, with Yaxel Lemborg leading the way. He's been able to give the team 13.5 points, a little bit over 10 boards per contest, a little bit over 2 blocks for a UAB team that has really struggled from 3-point range. They're shooting just 31.3% from 3-point range. They've really been abandoning ship on taking a lot of 3-point shots, as Temple has been able to guard the arc when they've been away from home, but at home, they allow opponents to shoot 36.7%. That's been relatively rough for them, but you've got a lot of guys like Ephraim Johnson, Alejandro Don Carlos Vasquez, Eric Gaines. I'll give you between about 10.5 to 11.5 points per contest in the backcourt. Down low, you've been able to get a little bit more with about 4.5 rebounds per game out of Kristen Coleman, as well as been able to do a nice job being able to provide a little bit of rim protection for this team, and I do think that that's going to be just enough for this UAB team. You've got a Temple team that just has not been able to put the ball in the basket all season long to mask the deficiencies of UAB being well outside the top 230 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, for the Temple team, 264th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. UAB is more around 128th, and for UAB, they only take a fall off about 1.5 points fewer scored per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and they're a top 80 or so offense with regards to points scored when they are away from home. So I do like UAB to be able to get the job done here. I set them as a 4.5 point favorite, and I think after what we saw against our good friends Memphis, things are going to be very much tamed down in this ordeal as well. You've got a Temple team that in regulation has failed to get past the 68-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think that the UAB defense going to be able to get back to form. They have still given up 74 or fewer in 3 out of their last 5 games. So did my total 144.5, diving under. I'm willing to lay up to 4 with UAB. 731, 732 on the betting board. Manhattan plays this Iona. Iona is a favorite of 7 to 7.5 points. Totals between 144.5 and 145. And I did set Manhattan as a underdog in this ordeal of 7.5 points. 7 is a maximum willing to lay with Iona, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Iona. They've been dealing with their top scorer, Greg Gecko Gordon, being out of the fold. He was doing a nice job being able to supply 6 plus rebounds, 16 points per game, but I mean, even without him, this Manhattan team, they just cannot match up with what this Iona team brings to the table. You've got a pair of guys in Shaquille Bender, coupled with Sidhu Traore, who've been able to do a solid job. They're combining for about 25 points per contest between the two of them, nearly 4 assists, 2.5 steals per contest, but for Manhattan, they are outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. I do like the freshman in Jaden Winston, who's been able to give you 2 steals, throws in there about 9 points per contest, but also turns the ball over north of 2.5 times per contest. Manhattan outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, so that has been a little bit less than savory. Now, the good news for this team, DeJuan Clayton, who's literally in his, I believe, 8th year of college basketball, has somehow, someway gotten back out there in the fold. I'm curious to see if he goes for year number 9. I mean, Van Wilder is right now jealous of DeJuan Clayton, but when he was at Cal last year in the Pac-12, in the limited amount of time that he did have, he was able to log about 9 points per contest, and in the 2 games that he's been out there for this Manhattan team, the defense has been just fine. They've given up fewer than 70 points in both of them. They've went 1-1. They held in there against Marist, and they knocked off Siena by 2, but I don't think that he's that much of a difference maker coming on this late in the season. And then for Iona, you've been able to have a few guys like Gene Amaraguren, who's been able to really pump it up from 3-point range. He's giving you 8.5 points, shooting 43.5% from 3-point range. Weeza Ponzo is starting to find that form that he had when he was over at Stetson last season, when he shot 46.5% from three, up to about 38% from distance this season. It is Iona, a team that they do give it up from three-point range. You're well outside the top 200 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but even with Clayton in the fold, he's never been a sniper from three-point range, a career less than 30% three-point shooter, so that's not going to be able to sort out the deficiencies of Manhattan as probably is going to help out this Manhattan defense, one that is currently 333rd in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and at home they are allowing opponents to shoot 38% from three-point range, and then you have to go up against an Iona team that's in the top 20 nationally with regards to turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. I mean, there's been struggles with both of these teams, but I think that Iona is going to force Manhattan into a lot of dead possessions, and I do think that Clayton being back in the fold helps Manhattan out a little bit in terms of their defense, and both of these teams well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, so good to see a little bit of sloppiness there, but for this Iona team, with how everything has been going for this team, they still have been able to do a relatively okay job on defense. Offense has certainly been lacking, 71 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games without Gordon. Meanwhile, you've got a Manhattan bunch that has scored 63 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I just don't see where this total is coming from. Set my total 143.5. I like the under. And with Iona, set them as a 7.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to lay the 7. 733, 734 on the betting board. Fairfield plays as Canisius. Canisius is a underdog of 8.5 to 9 points. Totals between 145 and 145.5. And with Canisius, I did set them as a underdog of 11 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Fairfield. Fairfield has been a little bit up and down this far this season, but this team has just been able to light it up from three-point range. They are shooting as a collective 37.9% from three-point range, and they've got each of their top 3 scorers shooting at least 38.5% from three-point range. You've got a pair of guys in Caleb Fields, coupled with Jalen Leach, who are both giving you 16 points per contest, but Jasper Floyd is a guy that needs to be spotlighted. 2.5 steals, 4.5 assists, 10 points, 6 boards per contest as a true freshman, helping a Fairfield team that has been rough with their offense the last few seasons and was very low tempo, go to being a little bit more of a mid-tempo team, and now being a top 140 team in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. As a matter of fact, they have reached a top 100 with this regard. They go up against a Canisius unit that it has been all sorts of rough for them. North of 13 turnovers per contest. They are in the bottom 100 in all of college basketball with regards to just general ball protection with Canisius. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they are about 250th in all of college basketball. They're not the world's worst three-point shooting team. You've been able to have a pair of guys in the backcourt in Trey Dinkins, Elysium Ejandal, who have been able to combine for about 29 points per contest, but with Ejandal, he has been missing in action for quite a while, just returned in that game against Ryder, played a limited 16 minutes and looked like himself with 5 points, so that's a bit concerning. Now, Canisius is also going to have the best rebounder in this game. Frank Mitchell has been able to give you 12.5 points, 11.3 rebounds per game. The problem comes in that Canisius really doesn't have anyone else that helps him hit the glass, so even though he's going to be able to dominate in his own individual battle, it's not like they've got a massive edge on glass. Fairfield, 267th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You've got a Canisius team that's checking in more in that neighborhood of about 115, so they're still going to be able to win the battle there, but not as dominant as you'd think with someone like Mr. Mitchell. And then for Canisius as well, in a little bit of a nip and tuck game, if this comes down to free throws, they shoot 63.7% at the free throw line. That is not something that you want to see. It is a Fairfield unit that they're not dominant in terms of generating turnovers, but they are a top 75 unit in terms of generating turnovers. I like what I've been seeing out of them, and the defense has been relatively solid as well. They've now given up 65 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, going up against a Canisius unit that just has not been able to find it on offense recently. In the month of February, I do not believe that they were able to exceed the 73-point plateau, and if you want to go back, ever since conference play really got started in January, this team has been able to get past 73 points in regulation since their game went to overtime against Ryder just once. So I do think that this could be a little bit more of a bogged down game. This is a total that I did set at a 147, just because I do think that Fairfield is going to be able to do their part with this total. I think that Canisius is going to be probably stuck right around about 68, 69 points, even though Fairfield has been giving it up a little bit from three-point range. So I'm going to be willing to go along with the over, but that's mainly because I set Fairfield as an 11.5 point favorite. I do think that they go out there and they're able to take hold of this game. I'm willing to lay with Fairfield and looking at this total over. 735, 736 on the betting board. Siena is going to be playing us to Niagara. Niagara is laying 7 points, and your total on this game going to be getting that anywhere between 136 to a 137. Seeing a stray 8 out there with Niagara as well, but I said Niagara is an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. I mean, my goodness, the Siena team has just been rudderless and sad. They've been dealing with injuries to Sean Gordon along with Michael Ealy, their top two scorers throughout the entirety of the season. And this Niagara team has been a better team when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. I believe they have covered all but one of their road games this far this season. And you just take a look at the 3-point shooting numbers that you've been able to get out of this Niagara team. They're just absolutely wild. On the road, they shoot 40.3% from three-point range compared to 32.6% from distance when they're at home. Like, it's completely night and day with this team. If you look at Niagara and just their overall points scored on a per possession basis, this is a team that is checking in between all locations right around 184th, but you only see a drop-off of about 0.7 points fewer per 100 possessions scored away from home rather than at home. And for the Siena team, the only thing that they've really got going for them is down low. You've got Giovanni Amaruju along with Michael Eva who've been able to combine for in that neighborhood about 12 rebounds per game, but Eva has been out of the fold for quite a while as well. They've had their point guard in Zach Tekin out since about Valentine's Day as well. He was giving the team about 3 assists per contest, so you're looking at someone like a Michael Ojo now having to play a whole bunch of minutes. He's a relatively unheralded freshman that's been giving you 4 points per contest. For Siena, they've got nobody in the backcourt that's able to really bring up the ball, so as a result, they are in the bottom 10 in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 25 team with their 3-point shooting percentage. They shoot 65.3% at the free throw line, and they're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, getting absolutely torched from 3-point range, ranking 311th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, this is a Niagara team that is now well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis themselves, and Niagara 248th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But once again, that number is 38.4% at home. It goes down to 31.5% in a road/neutral court environment. And for this Niagara team, among your top 6 scorers that have made at least 1 3, so that takes out Harlan Obiana, who's been able to give you 10 points, 8 boards as a true 7-footer. All but one of them shoots at least 37.5% from 3-point range. So they've done a relatively solid job with that regard. Luke Bumbalo has come in via the transfer portal. He's giving you 9.5 points, shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. You've got a trio of guys in Ayubeng Mensa, who I believe I mentioned before, Braxton Bayless, Ahmad Henderson. They combine between the three of them for about 33, 34 points per contest. And I think the Niagara should dominate a Siena team that has legitimately been a bottom 15 team in all of college basketball. And it's a Siena bunch that has scored 64 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So did set my total 135.5. Flat out don't think Siena does their part with this total. I'm looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Niagara. 737, 738 on the betting board. Marist, it's a road they're facing off against Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac is a 3-point favorite. Your total on this game is 138, and with Quinnipiac, I did set them as a favorite of 4 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the 3. For Marist, the defense has been tremendous. They're a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it's a little bit odd that they've been this good with their defense, not because they don't get after it or anything like that, but the reason why it is so odd is that this bunch has really not done a ton on the glass. They are barely inside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. This has been a Marist team, by the way, that has been all defense and really no offense. If you take a look at them in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they are 294th in all of college basketball, and they do have to face off against a Quinnipiac team that has a relatively good balance in terms of their offense, and this is a Quinnipiac team that on the glass they're a top 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of the rebound rate. Quinnipiac is about 142nd in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and even though we've had a few hiccups, shall we say, with regards to this Quinnipiac defense, they still are a bunch that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are checking in the top 100 themselves, so I do think that they're going to be able to do their job on this front. Meanwhile, for this Marist team, while they are number 4 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they do give up right around about 7 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home, and the biggest thing for this Marist unit is just continuing to be able to guard the 3-point arc. This Marist team has not been allowing a lot of looks from the outside. They allow opponents to shoot just 32% from 3-point range, and then their interior play is able to take hold from there. And for Marist, it is a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach with this team. You've only got one guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. That would be the 6.5 points at 5.1 rebounds per game, Jaden Doherty. But pretty much each of your top 7 scorers give you at least 3 rebounds per game. And this team is out shooting about 35.5% from 3-point range. You've been able to have a 45.5% 3-point shooter in Javon Cooley come on strong, but I do think that's just a little bit too much from Quinnipiac in this ordeal with having Matt Blonish give you 18.5 points, shooting 36.5% from 3-point range. Late in the game, you've got a Quinnipiac team that as well shoots 78.5% at the free throw line. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. And for Marist, they shoot 68% at the free throw line. That does have to have you very much concerned. You've got guys like Amari Tice, Paul Otinho, who are both able to give you about 6 rebounds per contest. And for Quinnipiac, they've done a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc when they've been away from them at 32.8%. That does diminish quite a bit to 36.3% at home. And this has been a Marist team that hasn't been able to do much really other than shoot threes. But even with that, I do think that Quinnipiac, with the way that they're able to play on the glass, with the way that they've got so much size and versatility down low, they're going to find a way to be able to get the job done against a Marist team that legitimately, even though they have been playing quite a bit better recently, has still scored 64 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. And you've got a Quinnipiac team that after they had a big giant doldrum on defense towards the back half of February, they've rebounded, giving up 64 points or fewer in now each of their last 2 games. So it's a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Quinnipiac, made them a 4-point favorite. And I did set my total at 138. I do think that this is going to be a nip and tuck game that's going to be involving a little bit of late game fouling. If you were taking a look at more of the openers in this spot, we were finding this total a little bit closer to a 138.5. And if we can get back to that 138.5, willing to take a look at the under and willing to lay up to 3.5 here with Quinnipiac. 739, 740 on the betting board. UT Rio Grande Valley is going to be playing us to Utah Tech. And Utah Tech is a 3.5 to a 4-point road favorite. And your total on this game, it is 152. Can I say Utah Tech is a 2.5-point favorite? I'm going to be taking the points with Grande Valley, and man, this is a Grande Valley team that absolutely stink or roonies. I mean, this team is outside the top 260 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They have not been able to get anything going from 3-point range, shooting 29.2% from 3. They turned the ball over 14 times per contest. I just can't do it with this Utah Tech team either. Utah Tech is outside the top 260 in terms of their rebound rate. Their bread and butter was supposed to be 3-point shooting, and they're an average to a below average 3-point shooting team at 33.8%. They turn the ball over 16 times per game. In terms of ball security, they're a bottom 30 team in all of college basketball. Like, you just have all sorts of deficiencies with this team, and they've just been dealing with so many injuries. The good news is they are getting Beon Riley back in fold, who shot 42% from 3 with 10.5 points per contest, and got Noah Gonsalves, who's been able to give you 10.5 points per game, but you really have nothing outside of Tanner Christensen down low, who's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Now, for UT Rio Grande Valley, this team has been a wreck with regards to in the glass as well. They're well outside the top 250. In terms of their rebound rate, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they've been dealing with an injury to Aaron Freeman, who's been giving you 5.5 rebounds per game. They were able to get back in the fold. Hassan Abdul-Hakim towards the beginning of the month of February. It looks like he's going to be back out of the fold. Once again, we haven't seen him in about a week or two, so that does put the onus on Elijah Elliott to really be able to take hold of this offense. He's been giving you 16 points, 3 assists per contest, but do like what I've been seeing a little bit more down the line of the guard in Sherman Bashir. He's been able to shoot 38% from 3-point range for a bunch that just has not been able to threes to be able to save their lives, so that's been impactful for a UT Rio Grande Valley team that they're looking to push tempo. They're absolutely looking to run it and gun it, and for a team that's looking to run it and gun it, to score fewer than 60 points in 4 straight games is just absolutely deplorable. And you just have 2 teams in general that have been so stinking inefficient that it's not even funny. Like, Utah Tech is looking to play super up-tempo. They're 321st in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. Meanwhile, UT Rio Grande Valley is down all the way down to 353rd. So, good old situation of something's got to give. Grande Valley has been able to score about 9.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. And the travel from the state of Utah on down to Texas, not necessarily the easiest in the world. I do think that Utah Tech has enough to be able to get it done, but I think that this is going to be a sloppy, grimy game, and I just don't know if either team really gets past 75 in this spot. I set my total at 150.5, so here at the 152, I think you got a lot of possessions, but a lot of dead possessions. Looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with UT Rio Grande Valley. 741, 742 on the betting board. Southern Utah hits the road face-off against Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is a favorite of 6.5 points. Your total on this game is 150.5. Set my total at a 147. I'm going to be willing to dive in on the under for the Southern Utah team. While it's been pretty ghastly for them on defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are well outside the top 250 with this respect. You've got a Stephen F. Austin team that has truly been all over the place this far this season because they're a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, they're a bottom 20 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and the Stephen F. Austin team has honestly been pretty good with their defense. They are 40th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So, despite the fact that you once again have Stephen F. Austin playing with their hair on fire, playing that up-tempo style, looking for a bunch of turnovers, what have you, they're back inside the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game. They just have been playing a lot of low-scoring slogs recently, and I think you're going to be getting that here. With Steph Austin last year, they were a really good three-point shooting team. Now they're only shooting about 33% from three. Latrell Jostle has been really the only guy on the roster that's been able to give you north of 10 points per contest. They've been dealing with an injury to Day-Day Hall. He's been out for a month plus. Meanwhile, for Southern Utah, this team just simply can't shoot from three-point range. They shoot 30% from distance, and that's the way that you've really got to try to exploit this Stephen F. Austin team. Stephen F. Austin allows opponents in a road/shooting court environment to shoot 37.6% from three, 35.9% at home. So home and road, they give up a lot of open looks, and you just don't have Southern Utah guys who are able to knock it down. Among guys who are averaging north of 1 point per game, you got two guys shooting above 29% from distance. That is not great, to say the least. And this Stephen F. Austin team, even though they don't have anyone that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, they do a really nice job of being a rebound by committee. Meanwhile, the Southern Utah team, they are 313th in all of college basketball. Their rebound rate, while our good friend Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin clocking in more than that neighborhood about 75th. So that's going to be a big damper for this Southern Utah team as well. It's a big reason why I did have to set Stephen F. Austin here as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it just because with Southern Utah, this team as well, they're not the world's worst at taking care of the ball, but 12 turnovers per game. I do think they're going to get a little bit eaten alive by Stephen F. Austin, and you got two teams that are just trending in massively opposite directions. For Stephen F. Austin, defense has been there for this team, but for Stephen F. Austin, this team has scored now fewer than 65 points in all but one out of their last 7 games. Meanwhile, for Southern Utah, they've given up at least 77 points in 5 straight games. It is a situation of something's got to give, and I do lean more to the defense in this spot. I did set my total at a 147. I do think that you're going to be able to get just enough out of guys like Nana, Ati, Bosico, and company. The just holds greater than some of its parts approach from Stephen F. Austin to be able to get this one done. So willing to lay up to 6.5 here, and going to be taking a look at the under. 743, 744 on the betting board. Ryder is going to be playing against the St. Peter's, and St. Peter's does find themselves as an underdog of 2 points. So on scheme, it's 135, and with St. Peter's, I did set them as an underdog of 2 points. I'm seeing a 1.5 popping up right now, and at 1.5, that will be my buy point on Ryder. The St. Peter's team has been one of the more dominant defenses in all of college basketball. And for St. Peter's, it doesn't sound like much, but in the month of February, they shot north of 33.5% from three-point range, so they were able to pick it up a little bit there. Overall for the season, they are up to shooting about 32.9% from three, and it's been big that Corey Washington has been able to return to the fold for this bunch, as he was out throughout much of the month of late January/early February, and has been able to return, and he's now been able to slide the team with 18 plus points in each of the last 5 games. Overall for the season, logs 16 points, 6 boards, steal and a half on 37% three-point shooting, and I mean, this St. Peter's team truly is as tough as a $2 steak. They're a top 80 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. They do a nice job hitting the offensive glass. Top 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they're able to haul in as an offensive rebound. And for St. Peter's, number 6 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So they do give up about 9.1 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And got a Ryder team that's about 211th of the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up 13.1 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. And Ryder certainly gives it up from three-point range. They allow opponents at home to shoot 35.5% from distance, but even with Washington being able to pick it up, I just don't know if the rest of the guys are going to be able to do enough for the St. Peter's team. You've got Latrell Reed, who gives you 11.5 points, north of 4 assists per contest. They've gotten Michael Hoagie back in the fold, but with Hoagie, he has played 18 minutes or fewer in each of the last 5 games now, impressively. He has played a grand total of 38 minutes in the last 3 games, and he's grabbed 21 rebounds in 38 minutes. So he's been able to do a really nice job on that front, but with this Ryder team, they've been able to pick it up with their three-point shooting as well. They were ghastly to begin the season, and they're going to have the best player out there on the floor, Mervyn James. 19 points, 6 boards, 2 assists, shoots 45.5% from 3, but now shooting 34.5% from distance. From the turn of the calendar to 2024, they're shooting north of 37% from distance, and Ryder is a top 125 team with regards to their rebound rate as well. Mervyn James, along Tyreek Ingram, TJ Weeks, between these 3 guys, you've been able to get nearly 19 rebounds per contest, and then Allen Boom Boom Powell has been able to give you about 3 assists per contest. It is a Ryder team that turns the ball over 12.5 times per game, but that's where they're able to exploit the St. Peter's team, one that does turn the ball over 12.7 times per contest, despite being well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. I do think the Ryder does a solid job down low, and I do think that with their improved three-point shooting percentage, they do just enough to be able to get the job done in a game where I do think that it's going to be nip and tuck and defense oriented. I set my total at 134, you're at the 135, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Ryder. Set them as a 2-point favorite, one to lay up to 1.5. 745, 746 on the betting board. UT Arlington plays host to Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist is a underdog of 7 points with your total 142 to 143.5. Did semi-total 138.5. I'm looking at the under. Arlington has cranked up their tempo. They are now a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, and Arlington is ghastly with their three-point shooting defense. They're outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but this Cal Baptist team just has not been able to generate any offense whatsoever as they've been dealing with an injury to Dominique Daniels. He has been out since February 3rd, was leading the way with 19 points, 3 assists on 36% three-point shooting. Without him, they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 11.6 points per contest, with Blondo Chiqueno being that guy. And Blondo Chiqueno shoots 27% from 3 and 61.5% of the free throw line for a Cal Baptist team that overall this season is shooting less than 33% from 3. They shoot 67.5% of the free throw line, and there's just not a lot of facilitation with this team. You've got Ivan Odriogo along with Hunter Goodrick. These two guys have been able to combine for 17 rebounds per game, and Cal Baptist should be able to win that battle down low. In terms of their rebound rate, with these two guys really manning things, they're a top 45 team with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, when it comes to UT Arlington, this team, they are not quite that, although UT Arlington, it's not like they get completely cooked on the glass or anything like that. They're 93rd. You've got DeJuan Gordon, who's been able to give you about 9 rebounds per contest. Samar Wilson, he's been able to do a nice job. He's been able to log 12 points, 8 rebounds per game, but Philip Russell has really been able to elevate this team, 14 points, 4 assists, and UT Arlington still outside the top 300 in terms of ball security with 15.5 turnovers per game, but it's gotten better ever since Russell has been out there on the fold, and you've been able to get quite a bit more recently out of Aaron Cash. He transferred from the SEC, has been able to supply the team with 27 points, 17 rebounds in the last 2 games. That emergence, I think, is very big for an Arlington team, and overall, is shooting about 35% from 3-point. UT Arlington really gives it up from the outside. The interior defense for them has been very good as well. And as I was mentioning with Cal Baptist, the fact that this team just has not been able to give you really too much scoring at all with regards to the outside game, that does make the interior just so much bigger. And for this Cal Baptist team, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, while they do such a tremendous job on the glass, they do allow opponents in a road/shoot-score environment to shoot a little bit north of 50% on their twos. Meanwhile, with regards to the CT Arlington team, they're more around 61st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And with this Cal Baptist team scoring 65 points or fewer in 3 of the last 4 games, with one of those games coming in overtime, I do think that this is going to be a bogged down game. Set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with UT Arlington, and in terms of the total, set mine at a 138.5. So also going to be taking a look at the under to go along with 7+ here with Cal Baptist. I do think that Cal Baptist has a little bit of a tough time scoring, but I do think that they hold in this one. I do think that because Cal Baptist does a nice job on the glass, that this 7 is just gotten a little bit too lofty. So taking the 7, and I'm going to be taking a look at the under. 747, 748 on the betting board. Utah Valley is road face off against Tarleton State, and Tarleton State is a favorite of 7 points. Your total on this game, 140.5 to 141.5 with Tarleton State. I did set them as a favorite of 7 points. So this is a little bit more of a wait and see. I'm seeing a 6.5 out there, and 6.5, I would be willing to lay it against a Utah Valley team that is a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of 3-point shooting percentage when they're away from home. I mean, this has just been absolutely awful for Utah Valley. Utah Valley has killed Stone Carrawell along Drake Allen, who've been able to combine for 23 points per contest, 6 assists, and Stone Carrawell shoots 35% from 3, but other than Trayvon Doris, who I think has made 2 threes this season, nobody else on the roster shoots above 30.2% from 3-point range, and when it comes to attacking this Tarleton State team, you're able to do so much more from the outside. Tarleton State, they're one of the better teams at being able to rip the ball away and be able to generate turnovers, and because they do gamble for those turnovers, that does leave them a little bit more vulnerable to giving up the 3 ball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Tarleton State team that is checking in 202nd in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot 35.7% from distance when they're at home, but with them not being able to attack there, I think it's a little bit of doomsday, especially with Trayvon Doris, who's been able to give you about 7.5 boards, block and a half per contest, being the lone guy on the roster that is able to give you north of 4 rebounds per game. It's a Utah Valley team that, even though they do have that true 7-footer down low, as a result, with regards to rebound rate, they're just 184th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Tarleton State, they do lack a little bit of something down low at 265th in the country, but despite them being outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game, as a matter of fact, outside the top 275, they've been able to get good flowing offense recently with a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach, with 4 different guys giving you at least 12 points per contest. And since the beginning of the month of February, this Tarleton State team, they've been able to reach at least 70 points in every single one of their games. Tarleton State made the announcement that Billy Gillespie is actually going to be back in the fold, so this interim coaching regime, you got to feel like these guys are going to play very hard for them. That has been the case all season long, and they're going to want to pull out all the stops. And I do think the Tarleton State goes out there, gets the job done in this spot, and I do think that with Utah Valley, they're going to be held down once again. I did set my total at a 141. We're seeing between 141 and 141. Personally, I do lean a little bit to the under. I do think that Tarleton State, just with how slow their tempo is, they're going to be slowed down a little bit. And this is a Utah Valley team that they themselves have been playing some solid defense, giving up fewer than 62 points through their last 5 games. So going to be one to take a look at the under. And with Tarleton, going to be one to lay the number, made them a 7-point favorite. 749, 750 on the betting board. It is Seattle on the road facing up against Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian, a 1.5 to 2.0 underdog. And your total on this game, going to be finding that anywhere between a 141 to a 141.5. And I did set my total at a 139.5. I'm looking at the under. Abilene Christian, a little bit more of an up-tempo team, but another one of those bunches that they really do sell out for turnovers. They are looking to make things very scrambled in general, and they do go up against one of the best defenses they're going to find, not just in the WAC, but really in mid-major college basketball in Seattle. Seattle is a team that's relatively mid up on themselves, but they are 19th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do give up about 12 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home, but they're also facing off against an Abilene Christian team that is in the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Abilene Christian, they just haven't necessarily been able to get sustained offense. They shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range and 12.5 turnovers a game. Not too bad considering their tempo, but this Abilene Christian bunch, well outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. Actually a relatively solid 3-point shooting defense. They allow opponents to shoot less than 32.5% from distance, so they do a relatively solid job on that front. But the Seattle team, they've been able to hunker down in so many different ways. You've got that top scorer out there in Cam Tyson, who's able to give you 18 plus points per contest, but Jason Christophilius has been able to give you double figures along with Alex Shoemaker. Down low, you've got Kobe Williamson along with Brandon Chatfield. They combine for 12 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest as well. So it's a team with a lot of balance, and it is a Seattle team that if you do have trepidation with them, and it's a big reason why I can only set them as a 1.5 point favorite, not anything more than that, is that they do turn the ball over north of 12 times per contest as well. Seattle, really good 3-point shooting defense. They are 9th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but this is an Abilene Christian team that they are outside the top 300 in terms of percentage of their shots that they do take from 3-point range. Hunter Jack Madden is really the lone guy that is a threat from 3-point range, giving you about 12.5 points, shoots 42% from 3-point range. A lot of the other guys, they're just sort of ancillary role guys. You've got Arian Simmons, Ali Abdul-Diba, who've been able to give you about 28.5 points per contest. They combine for about 11 boards, but it's clear that Abilene Christian looking to be able to just do a nice job generating a bunch of turnovers, looking to D it up in general. This bunch has given up now 68 points for fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, and for the Seattle bunch, they had that tough game against UT Arlington, but sans that UT Arlington game, this team has done a really nice job of being able to hunker down on defense in regulation. They have given up now 70 points or fewer in all but one out of their last 7 games, and the last time these two teams faced off, Seattle was able to hold Abilene Christian to 52 points, so I do think that Abilene Christian going to be able to give you a better effort in this spot. They actually were able to do a good job winning the turnover battle 14-7 first time around. They just got killed on the glass, and I do think that we're going to see Abilene Christian have a little bit of a tough time scoring, much like they did the first time around, but I do think that after Seattle went 9 of 19 in the first meeting, things start to iron out, and I do think that Seattle is going to have their fair share of turnovers. So set my line at 1.5. Here at a 2, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Abilene Christian, and did set my total 139.5. Diving under and taking 2+ here with Abilene Christian. 751, 752 on the betting board. Oregon plays us to Colorado. Colorado, an underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. So on scheme is 150.5 with Oregon. I did set them as a favorite of 2 points. At the 2.5, that is going to be my buy point on Colorado. This Colorado unit has been very good with their 3-point shooting all season long, but they go from shooting north of 42% from 3-point range at home to shooting more around about 35 or so percent when they're in a road or neutral court venue. So that is going to be hurting them quite a bit. And with this Oregon bunch, I do think that they're going to do a nice job down low against a Colorado team that, I mean, in their own right, they're a top 20 team in terms of rebound rate. Oregon is outside the top 50, but keep in mind with Oregon, they were without quite a few pieces throughout the early part of the season, including N'Faly Dante, who's been their top guy with a little bit over 1.5 blocks, 15 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. So he's really been able to elevate an Oregon team that home and road, they're a very different bunch. With this Oregon team, they're one of the worst 3-point shooting defenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball, and they're away from home. They allow opponents away from home to shoot 38.1% from distance. That sinks all the way to 30.9% when they are at home. And Colorado, just with the way that things are working with their elevation, they have some big home and road splits themselves. You find that across all sports with the teams from the great state of Colorado, whether that be the Rockies, whether that be the Denver Broncos, name your sport. Colorado typically provides their teams with big giant home and road splits, and that's the case for this Buffalo team. They are giving up 12.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and for this Colorado team on offense. They are scoring about 13.2 points per 100 possessions when they leave home. They still have KJ Simpson along Tristan Da Silva, who've been a very good 1-2 punch, combining for about 36 points. Both give you 5.5 boards, and Simpson has been able to shoot 46.5% from three-point range. But again, with Simpson, when he is away from home, he's really the lone guy that is able to pop threes for the team. He actually shoots 49% from three-point range when he's away from home. Da Silva, meanwhile, he goes from shooting well north of 40% from three-point range at home to about 28% when he's away from home, so that's a little bit of an issue. You got Cody Williams, who's been able to do a solid job shooting about 45.5% from three-point range for this Buffalo team. He chips in their double figures, but now he's dealing with a little bit of an injury as well, and I do think that that's a big factor in this contest as well, is the circumstance where with Oregon, I did set them as a 2-point favorite. I do think that, though, Colorado, as their home and road splits, are going to be able to hold in there on the glass, and now that we're getting north of 2, that is my buy point on Colorado. I did set my total of 150. I do think that we're going to see some late game fouling, Oregon playing a little bit more up-tempo than they did in past years, but I do think that because they are such a better team at being able to guard the perimeter at home, that's going to bog down this game just a little bit. So I had a 150.5 looking at the under, and willing to take anything north of 2 here with Colorado. 753, 754 on the betting board. Same East State. They hit the road, they're facing off against Louisiana Tech, and Louisiana Tech is an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite with your total 136.5 to 137, and with Louisiana Tech, I did set them as a favorite of 10 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Sam Houston State. They've just been a rudderless and confusing team all season long because they still do a relatively solid job of being able to generate a few turnovers. Their three-point shooting defense, it hasn't been great. It hasn't been terrible, but they are just a bunch that, in general, has been really trying to cobble up the pieces ever since their coach and Jason Hooten left in the offseason. And for Sam Houston State, they're not guarding the three-point line the way that they did last season. Now, it's still not bad. They're about 91st in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but going up against the Louisiana Tech team as a top 20 team in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, they're a top 35 team with regards to rebound rate. Really, the lone kryptonite that Louisiana Tech does have is that they allow opponents to shoot 33.6% from three, but that goes all the way down to about 31% when they're at home. And for Louisiana Tech, they do have a few guys they're able to launch from three-point range as well. Isaiah Crawford has been your main man in terms of scoring, giving you a block and a half, 2 steals, 16 points, 6 boards on 40% three-point shooting. As a matter of fact, for Louisiana Tech, among their top 4 players that have made at least 1 3 thus far this season, all but one of them are shooting at least 40.5% from three-point range. Meanwhile, you got Daniel Bacho down low. The Bacho man has been able to give you 2.5 blocks, 14.5 points, 10 boards. Louisiana Tech should be able to win this battle down low. And for Sam Houston State, they've been on a nice 5-game win streak. Defense itself has given up 64 points or fewer for their last 5 games. They've been able to do a solid job with that regard, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to penetrate this Louisiana Tech team that, I mean, they did have a little bit of a rough go of it last time out against Western Kentucky. That's just the way that Western Kentucky is playing. But if you take out games against Western Kentucky, I'll put it to you that way, this team has not allowed north of 70 points since these last 2 teams faced off last in regulation, because their game against Liberty went to overtime as well. But I do think that we are going to see a bogged down, slow game with 2 teams playing really good defense. But I do think that in the end, Louisiana Tech, they're going to be able to win this battle on the glass. As a result, I did set my total 134. I'm looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 9.5 here with LA Tech. 755, 756 on the betting board. UTEP is going to be playing us to Florida National. Florida National is an 8 to an 8.5 point underdog with your total 142 to 142.5. Feels like these 2 teams play every week, by the way. I have no idea why. It's sort of that Conference USA format, but that said, when it comes to this spot, I did set UTEP as a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number with UTEP. They do a really good job of being able to force turnovers, and really both of these teams do. They're both in the top 5 nationally with regards to turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, and it's all about gauging the other fortes, because with UTEP, they're a lesser 3-point shooting team than Florida National, but they do a whole heck of a lot of better job being able to guard the 3-point line. Florida National out of 362 D1 teams, they are 362nd in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, UTEP, they're only shooting about 31.5% from distance themselves, but with this UTEP team, they are about 111th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Both of these teams really leave something to be desired on the glass, but at the very least, with UTEP, you've got a modicum of rebounding with Zid Boom Boom Powell, Otis Frazier, along Kevin Kalu, all being able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, it's just the Ontario Dean show for Florida National. He's been great. 5 boards, 4 assists, 3.5 steals. That leads all of college basketball, 13 points per game, but he's the only guy in the roster right now that's giving you north of 3.6 rebounds per game. It's just absolutely deplorable what you've been able to get down low. I mean, Seth Pinckney, ever since he transferred in from Quinnipiac, he hasn't been able to develop. You've been able to get some relatively good scoring as well out of Javante Hawkins. He's been able to give you 13 points, shoots in the 930s from 3-point range, but Florida National also only shooting about 67% at the free throw line. This is a little bit of a nip and tuck game. That's going to come back to bite them a little bit. Both of these teams, they themselves do turn the ball over north of 14 times per contest, but I just feel better about what UTEP has around them. You've got Tay Hardy as your dominant scorer, is able to give you 15 points, shoots the 930s from three-point range, but I mean, he's just surrounded by many more weapons than this Florida National team. Florida National just getting absolutely pounded on the glass, and even though Florida National is a team that shoots it a little bit better from three with their defense, when they don't generate a turnover being far worse than that of UTEP's, I do think that UTEP is going to be the team that pulls it out, and they're the more complete team, which is why I did set them as a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number and made my total 145. So also going to be taking a look at the over. Both of these teams are playing relatively up-tempo, especially Florida National in the top 30 in terms of total possessions per game, and I do think that both of these teams are in defense and offense. So looking at the over and willing to lay with UTEP, 757, 758 on the big board. Washington State, they play us all Washington. Washington is a underdog of 6.5 to 7 points. Total on this game is 149.5. I set Washington State as a 6.5-point favorite. 7 is my buy point on Washington. Now, Huskies are probably going to be canning our good friend Mike Hopkins at the end of the season, but do have to feel like the guys are going to play relatively hard for him, and I do think that this is a bit of a tricky matchup for a Washington State team that they're disciplined and they're solid in so many aspects. They're not really dominant in any of them. With Washington State, they turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They're a pretty good rebound rate team, and the top 75 in all of college basketball. They shoot about 35.5% from three. Like, all around, this is a team that they don't have a true weakness, but they don't really have a true strength either. I like what Miles Rice and Isaac Jones have brought to the table, with both supplying 15.5 points per contest. Jones is able to give you 7.5 boards, block per contest. Rice is your main facilitator with 4 assists. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from three, but you've got other guys like Mr. Wells, who's been a very Wells from three-point range. Jalen Wells is able to shoot 44.5% from three, 12.5 points per contest out of him, and the versatility of Andre Yagovsky is really second to none. But with Washington, you've got Xavier Wheeler, Keon Brooks, the Kentucky connection, combined for just under 36 points. Brooks is able to give you 6.5 boards, shoots 39% from three, and for this Washington team, they shoot 35% from three-point range. Now, they do give it up from three-point range when they're away from home. Washington, when they're at home, they allow opponents to shoot 30.4% from three. This balloons all the way up to about 38% in a road or neutral court environment, and for Washington State, I mean, they're just steady overall. They allow opponents to shoot 32.1% from three-point range at home, 32.6% when they're away from home. Washington State has certainly been the better defensive team thus far this season in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They check in 53rd, while Washington is 183rd, but Washington is only giving up about 2.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. Washington has also done a relatively solid job of only turning the ball over 11.5 times per contest, being a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game. I do think that that's going to keep them relatively lively in this one. Last time these two teams faced off, Washington State was able to pull it out in overtime by kind of 90 to 87 on the night where the Huskies lost the turnover battle 9-6 and they lost the rebound battle. I do think that they're going to do a little bit better on the glass, and I do think that with Washington, they're going to be able to remain in this game, though I do think that in the end, Washington State gets the job done outright. So this is a line that I did set at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points, and with this total, I did set mine at a 146.5 last time these two teams played. In regulation, since the game went to overtime, it was about like 83 to 83. I do think that you're going to be getting some points, but at the same time, I do think that things are going to be bogged down a little bit more with a Washington State team as well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. So low and under, and I'm going to be willing to take 7+ here with the Huskies. 759, 760 on the betting board. UCLA is going to be playing us to Arizona, and Arizona is a favorite of 8.5 points. So this game is 147, and with Arizona, I did set them as a favorite of 9 points. 8.5 is a max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. With Arizona, this team still does have some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. They are giving up more than 20 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home, but got a UCLA unit that just is not in good form in general, as the team has scored fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. They're starting to really give it up on defense as well, and you just don't have a lot from the outside for UCLA. Sebastian Mack has supplied the team with about 13 points per contest, but you just take a look at this roster. Will McClendon and Lazar Stefanovic are like the only two guys that consistently take threes that shoot above 29.5% from distance. For UCLA, they are well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, despite being relatively efficient. They only turn the ball over about 10.8 times per contest. Got a guy in Sebastian Mack that's able to give you 13 points per game, and down low, Adam Bona, he's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, but they run into an Arizona team that's a top 5 team nationally in terms of rebound rate. Umar Ballo, he has been able to average a double-double, 13 points, right around about 10 boards, but then you've got Kashad Johnson, Pell Larson, along with Caleb Love. You're able to throw in there as well the foreign gentleman, Monteusz Krivas, hopefully I said that correctly. All these guys give you north of 4.2 rebounds per game. And then with Johnson, he's able to shoot 36% from three. And Arizona as a whole, they shoot 37.5% from the outside. With Arizona, the one trouble spot for them has been guarding the three-point line away from home. Arizona at home allows opponents to shoot 32.1% from three. This balloons up to nearly 36% in a road or neutral court environment. And while Arizona's home and road splits with regards to the defense, much more demonstrative than their offense, they are still scoring on a per-possession basis right around about 11.5 points fewer when they are away from home. But you also have a UCLA team that just has been relatively rough in terms of their defense as well, and they get a little bit of a boost at home. It's not like it's a bunch that's going to be super dominant, though, even though they do give up about 14 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. They're still 95th overall, and this is still a UCLA team that I think is going to have a little bit of a tough time being able to guard the three-point line. They're overall 208th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and with having so many guys like Caleb Wolf, who shoots 36% from three, 3.5 assists per contest. As a matter of fact, Love, Pelle Larson, along with Kylan Boswell, all average at least 3.5 assists per game. They're the only team in all of college basketball with three separate guys giving you at least 3.5 assists per game. I think it's going to be a little bit too much for UCLA to handle. I did set Arizona as a result as a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I did set my total at 149. Fully recognize that UCLA is a little bit of a lower tempo team, but Arizona, they're a top 20 team in terms of total possessions per game. I think they're going to dictate the terms in this one, so looking at the over and willing to lay with Arizona. 761, 762 on the betting board. It is Cal Poly, and they're on the road. They're facing off against UC Irvine. Zot for the Anteaters, who are 22 to 22.5 point favorites. Your total on this game, it is 137.5 to 138. I fully agree with this. I set UC Irvine as a 23-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This Cal Poly team has just been a skid mark on the underpants of college basketball for so long. They're outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per-possession basis. You just have not been able to get much going outside of Kobe Sanders and his scoring. Kobe Sanders has been able to supply the team with 19 points per contest. She's in the mid-30s from three-point range with 3 assists per game, but nobody else is doing anything for this team. Cal Poly is well outside the top 275 with regards to the rebound rate. Joel Armatradin with his 4.7 rebounds per game, he leads the team with that regard. This is a bunch that's outside the top 240 in terms of total possessions per game, yet they turn the ball over 13 times per contest, and they go up against an Irvine team that's in the top 35 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. And though Irvine can be a little bit up and down with their offense, they do turn the ball over 12 times per game. I love their point guard, Pierre Cockrell. 6.3 assists and 2.2 turnovers per game. You've got a pair of guys in Justin Hone along with Andre 3000 Henry, who are able to combine for about 23 points per game. Between the two of them, they're shooting nearly 40% from three-point range. This UC Irvine team is a pretty solid team on the glass as well. Devin Tills has been able to give you about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game. He's got versatility. He's able to light it up from three-point range for an Irvine team that is 52nd in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate. If you look just specifically at their rebound rate at home, they're a top 50 team with this regard as well. So they do a really nice job there, even though they are actually giving up fewer points per possession when they're away from home rather than when they are home. I do think that they're going to buckle down, take it to a Cal Poly team that just has not been able to find it really in all facets of basketball. And I do think that for Cal Poly, a bunch that has now given up at least 80 points in 3 of their last 5 games, but they have failed to get past 57 in 3 of their last 5 as well. It's going to be a long night for them going up against a UC Irvine team that, they had that overtime game against UC San Diego, but if you look at regulation and regulation only, this is a squad that has given up now 72 points or fewer in all but one of their games here this calendar year that have not gone to overtime. So this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay with UC Irvine. Also set my total at a 133. I just simply don't think that Cal Poly is going to be able to do their part with this total. So looking at the under, I'm willing to lay with Irvine. 763, 764 on the betting board. UC Riverside is going to be playing also Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton is a underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. Your total on this game between 136 and 137. And I did set Fullerton as an underdog of 6.5 points. It's open up at a 4.5, and I really don't understand why the money is coming in on Fullerton. I'm going to be willing to lay with UC Riverside. This Fullerton bunch is just not the same team that they were a season ago. And for Fullerton, the defense isn't terrible. They're inside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Where they're really gone wrong is the offense. They're outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Max Jones has been solid, 15 plus points. He's able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range. To the credit of this Fullerton team, they're 73rd in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but this UC Riverside team is not necessarily one that is going to be going out there and launching a ton of threes or anything like that. Riverside, they themselves turn 57th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but you have a pair of guys that do a nice job of really being able to formulate and operate the offense, as Isaiah Moses has teamed up with Brandon Hargis to be able to give you about 25 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot 33% from three for a Riverside team that is a top 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Meanwhile, for Fullerton, you've gotten a little bit more out of Dom Bruton, who's been able to supply the team with about 16.5 points per game. That's been big because they've been dealing with an injury to Max Jones recently. Max Jones, it sounds like, has a chance to be able to play in this game, but even if he does, he's probably not going to be fully at 100%. Got Torrey San Antonio has been able to do a nice job being able to put in there some work, giving the team 8.5 points per game. And without having Max Jones in the fold, honestly, this Cal State Fullerton team hasn't been completely awful. They've went 3-2 in this stretch. It's been all about the defense. They have given up 71 points or fewer now each of their last 4 games. And for this Riverside team, they have actually been getting gash on defense, 73 plus points, surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games, including the last time these two teams played. That was an 81-73 expose where both teams combined to shoot 20 of 43 from three-point range. I certainly do think that that's going to be bogged down a little bit, but I do think that Riverside getting back out there on their home floor, I think is going to be very critical. It's a Riverside team that they do respond just a little bit differently to being at home rather than when they are on the road. They're giving up about 5.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. And I do think that this Fullerton team that has been very good with regards to perimeter defense, but is giving you absolutely nothing on offense, is going to have a little bit of a tough time there. So I did set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number and also set my total at a 136.5, circumstance where I'm going to look at the 137 under and UC Riverside. 765, 766 on the betting board. It is UC Davis, and they're facing up against UC San Diego. Line is actually moving as I do this podcast. You were seeing UC Davis anywhere between about a 6 to a 7-point favorite. Now a lot of these numbers are moving to the 6.5/7 line. Total on this game is 140.5, and with UC San Diego, made them a 7-point favorite. Anything of less than 7, so the 6 to 6.5 that I'm seeing, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. San Diego has done such a good job of being able to just flow good offense. They're only turning the ball over about 9.5 times per game while having that good go-to scorer. That would be Mr. Bryce Pope, who's been able to give the team 18.5 points per game. Now, on the flip side, you've got Mr. Elijah Pepper, who's been able to supply north of 20 points per contest. He's been able to chip in their 5 boards. He has been a do-it-all player for a UC Davis team that is in the top 75 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And this is a San Diego team that their boost at home with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, it's only about 2.1 points more per 100 possession. So they're a pretty steady team, whether they're at home or on the road. But the San Diego team, they're also now ascending into the top 120 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis as well. They've been getting better and better on that side of the ball as the season has went on, and I do think that they're going to be able to hold up down low. You've been able to get some relatively good production out of the big man that comes in from UC Irvine, and Emmanuel Shaminga has been a little bit in and out of the fold throughout the season, but he's been able to supply the team with about 5 boards, chips in there a block or 2 per contest as well. He has come back into the fold and has been able to give the team a little bit down low, but the guy that has really been able to help out Pope is Tyler McGee. He was missing for the first about 10 or so games of the season and does shoot just 59% of the free throw line, but he also shoots 41.5% from distance, 14.5 points per contest, going up against a UC Davis unit that, they just are a very top-heavy team. Outside of Elijah Pepper, you've had Ty Johnson do a nice job supplying the team with 17.5 points, 3.5 assists. Both of these guys, and Pepper and Johnson, both giving nearly 2 steals per contest. But outside these 2 guys, you got one other player that gives you north of 6 points per game. That'd be Kane Milling with his 9.5 points per contest for this UC Davis team. It's a case where Elijah Pepper is also the only player on the roster that shoots north of 34% from 3-point range, and that's where you're really able to hurt this UC San Diego team. UC San Diego is allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from 3-point range, about 140th in all of college basketball. They allow you quite a few open looks. UC Davis, meanwhile, they're about 120th. I do think that with just the holes greater than some of its parts rebounding approach that you've got with this UC San Diego team, it's going to work out relatively well in this spot. It is a UC Davis team that they're not too bad on the glass themselves. They're a bunch that they've got their main 2 scorers, and then everyone else sort of fills in around them. With San Diego, they're currently clocking in about 220th in the country with regards to rebound rate. San Diego is facing off against a Davis team that's more around 222nd, but I do think that in the end, Bryce Pope going to be able to have just a little bit more help around him than Elijah Pepper. And when it comes to this UC Davis team, it has been a bunch that has been a little bit up and down in terms of their defense, and with regards to their scoring, has scored just 66 points or fewer in now 3 out of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a San Diego team that has been able to get to at least 76 in 4 of their last 5 games. I like the recent form of San Diego a little bit more, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number, set them as a 7-point favorite, and I did make my total a 143. I think that both of these teams get going a little bit more on offense. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with UC San Diego, 767, 768 on the betting board. Long Beach State is playing us to UC Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is an underdog of 5 points, totals between 155 and 156. This has been such a strange Santa Barbara team all season long, and I'm going to be willing to take the 5. I just can't quit this UC Santa Barbara team. Probably for worse in this case, but UC Santa Barbara, they're overall 197th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're giving up 8.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're on the road rather than at home. If you look at their road numbers and their road numbers only, this UC Santa Barbara team is actually a top 45 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they do a nice job on the glass. They're a top 50 team with regards to their rebound rate, as you've got a pair of guys in Yohan Traore along with Ariel Bland who have been able to combine for 11.5 rebounds per game. AJ Mitchell is a good go-to scorer. He's been able to supply this team with 19.5 points, 4 assists. From 3-point, he's shooting about 37.5% from the outside. It does fall off to about 32% at home. They don't have quite the same home and road splits with regards to the offense as they do the defense, but this Long Beach State team, they themselves don't run that, so you shoot it very well. Marcus Iones, he gives you 17 points, 3 assists, but he shoots about 26.5% from 3 for a Long Beach State team that's outside the top 300 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage at 30.5%. They turn the ball for 13 times per contest, but they do have one of the few duos in all of college basketball that both average 8 rebounds on their own. You've got Abakar Traore, give you 12 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, steal and a half, block and a half per contest. Meanwhile, Siena Traore, double-double machine, 10 rebounds along with 11.5 points per game. Abakar helps out a little bit more in the backcourt. Siena is more of a true low-post presence, and you've been able to get a bit of production out of Mason Thompson as well. Messiah Thompson, he's been able to supply this team with about 7 points per contest, but thought that he'd be able to give a little bit more in terms of facilitation. He just hasn't necessarily been the guy thus far this season, and for the Santa Barbara bunch, it has been all over the place with regards to their defense. They've now given up at least 70 points each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Long Beach State, they've had their difficulties as well, giving up at least 73 points in 4 of their last 5 games, while the offense has been stuck in a little bit of neutral, scoring 71 or less in each of their previous 3. So, good old situation of something's got to give. I do think that with Long Beach State being an okay 3-point shooting defense, they're certainly not tremendous by any stretch of the imagination. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 32% from 3-point at home. I think that that's going to be quite impactful to the total going under. I did set my total at 154.5, so you're at a 155, 156. I'm going to be willing to go under. Now, Santa Barbara, I did make them a underdog 4.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the 5. 769, 770 on the betting board. Stanford plays host to Cal. California is an underdog of 3.5 to 4.5 points, and your total on this game is between 155 and 155.5. And with Stanford, I did set them as a favorite of 3 points. So here at the 4 to 4.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Cal. I just can't trust in this Stanford team, even though they have been a whole heck of a lot better at home rather than on the road. Stanford at home is shooting north of 41% from 3-point range and sub 34.5% away from home. And this is also a Stanford unit that is averaging about 17.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road or neutral court environment. But the defense, I mean, it's relatively the same at home rather than on the road in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a Stanford team that, regardless of being at home or being on the road, they just have not guarded the arc all season long. They allow opponents to shoot 36.2% from 3 away from home, 35.9% at home, so they're not getting too much of a boost there. And you've got a Cal team that has been getting absolutely decimated with regards to giving up the arc as well, 297th at all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But I do think the Cal is going to be able to win the battle down low, really outside of Maximine Reynaud, who's been able to average a double-double for Stanford, 15-plus points, right around about 10 rebounds per game. You don't have a lot down low. Meanwhile, you've got a Cal team that has been solid on the glass. Not going to call them great by any stretch of the imagination, but about 167th as Jalen Tyson, Fardaws Amick. These 2 guys combined for about 17 rebounds per game. Amick is someone that's stands 6'11". He's able to pop some threes, and Jalen Tyson has been able to give you a legit 20 points per contest, going against a Stanford unit that, in terms of their rebound rate, they're checking in right around about 230 first. And with the Stanford bunch as well, you've had Cannon Carlisle really slow down after he had a tremendous start. I don't know why he was out for the first few games of the season, but he was out for the first few games of the season when they were doing things like pulling off the upset against Arizona. He was such a big part of it, and I mean, really, since the beginning of the month of February, he's come up snake eyes. He has given the team 12 points or fewer, and now every one out of his last 8 games for the season is now shooting from 3-point. Still a relatively solid mark at about 39% at home. That's actually 31% overall, so he's a much better player at home rather than on the road, much like much of this Stanford team, but they've been without their main facilitator as well in Jared Bynum, who was giving out north of 5 assists per contest. We have not seen him try to take the floor in about a month, and when he was trying to come back into games, he was only able to play for 5 minutes and was just completely ineffective. So I do think the Cal going to be able to hold in this game. They've been able to get a little bit more out of Jalen Celestine in the backcourt, supplying the team with 8.5 points, 44% three-point shooting. And for Cal, they only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. Stanford, more in that pocket of about 12.5 to 13. So, circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take the points with Cal, and with this total, I did set mine at a 153, so I'm also going to be taking a look at this total under. I think that Stanford continues to cool a little bit with their three-point shooting. 771, 772 on the betting board. USC is going to be playing us at Arizona State, and Arizona State is an 8.5 point underdog. Your total on this game is 144, and with USC, I did make them a favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Arizona State. It has been a just unruly and sad season for Arizona State, to say the least. Typically, this team is trying to get to Dayton, and Dayton is out of the cards for them. They are not going to be getting any sort of an at-large bid, but with Arizona State, you do have a trio of guys in Adam Miller, Jose Perez, and Frankie Collins, who've done a nice job combining for about 39 points per contest. You've got Perez shooting 41% from three-point range. For Arizona State and all their deficiencies, they are well outside the top 260 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. They only turn the ball over 10.5 times per game. They just flat out have guys that can't shoot. They shoot 41.9% from floor, 66% the free throw line, and 30.8% from three. All bottom marks in all of college basketball. And for Arizona State, they're getting plowed on the glass. They're outside the top 275 with regards to a rebound rate, but he faced off against a USC team that has DJ Rodman right now leading the way with about 5 rebounds. Vincent Iwuchukwu has not panned out the way that they were hoping. Joshua Morgan is a good shot blocker, but he really doesn't hit the glass. USC, as a result, in terms of their rebound rate, is quite diminished from where it has been in past years. They're more around 250th themselves. And for USC, his team shoots about 35% from three. Boogie Ellis has been rock solid. He's been able to give the team 17 points. Shoots 41% from three. And Isaiah Collier, just a stat sheet, so for 17 points, 4 assists. Siena per contest, getting those two guys back is big. And having Collier and Boogie Ellis out for a few games, that did warp their numbers a little bit, making them look a little bit worse than what they are, but it's kind of what it is. It has been a very much underachieving USC team that's right around about 300th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, going up against an Arizona State team that they do allow opponents to shoot 35.5% from three-point range away from home compared to 28.8% at home, but still a top 100 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And if you look at the amount of points that they allow on a per-possession basis, it is clear that this Arizona State team, not a bad defense, about 134th in all of college basketball with this regard. So I do think that Arizona State is going to be able to hold in there. It's a line that I said at 7. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Arizona State. And with regards to total, did some mine at a 143. I do think that USC is going to continue to get online a little bit more with their scoring, but really ever since the middle of the month of January, which USC had scored like 70 plus points in something like 16 out of their first 18 games, they really have hit a little bit of a fall. But I do think that Arizona is going to do just enough to be able to push the total over, especially with them having given up at least 80 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So looking over and at the points with Arizona State, 773, 774 on the betting board. Oregon State, they are going to be playing us Utah. Utah is a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite with your total 142.5 to 143. And with Utah, I did set them as a favorite of 7.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Last time these two teams played, I still remember it very fondly. Oregon State had a run of like north of 9 minutes where they did not score a single point. And for Oregon State, this is a completely different team when they're at home rather than on the road. For Oregon State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are far from impressive as they're about 252nd, but they give up 20.2 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. And for Utah, it's a complete and utter reverse split. For Utah, they're giving up 21.6 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for Utah, you do have Brandon Carlson, who's been able to do a nice job, 16.5 points. He's able to give you a block. He's able to pop threes, 7 rebounds per game for a Utah team that overall does shoot 35.5% from 3 now. With laying this number, I do have to recognize this. The trepidation with laying it with a Utah team that in a late game fouling situation, none of their top 5 scorers shoot above 71.7% of the free throw line as a collective. 64.6% is what they shoot at the free throw line. That's one of the worst marks in all of college basketball, but I do like what I'm seeing out of Davion Smith. Smith has done a great job with 12 points, 6.5 assists to only about 2.6 turnovers per contest. He's given out 2 turnovers or fewer in 3 of the team's last 4 games, while giving out 10 plus assists in 3 of the last 4 games. So he has been a really good distributor. You've got Gabe Manson, who shoots 38.5% from 3-point range. He's been rock solid. And for Oregon State, It's just how far can Jordan Pope carry them? He's been able to supply 17.5 points, shoots 38% from 3-point range, but this Oregon State team, well outside the top 175 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they just don't have a ton down low. Tyler Badu and Michael Rotage have been able to give you a combined about 12 rebounds per game, but this team is just not going to be able to compare to Utah in terms of rebound rate. Utah, 71st in the country with regards to rebound rate. Oregon State just 260th, and Oregon State has also turned the ball over 12.5 times per contest. Dexter Cano has been relatively solid, giving the team 10.5 points per contest, but he's now been a little bit in and out of the fold in the last few games as well, so that does make things a little bit dicey, though. Should be good to go in this one. It's a little bit of a sleepy spot for Utah, but I do think that in the end, they do find a way to be able to get the job done against an Oregon State team that just has had a tough time with their offense all season long. It did set my total 139.5. Looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 7 with Utah. Now we get the Sun Belt tournament out there in Pensacola, Florida. 775, 776 on the card. It is South Alabama. They're going to be playing against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite with your total between 150 and 150.5. I made South Alabama a 4-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 2.5 to 3. Now for South Alabama, this defense has not been what it has been in past years, and for South Alabama, they've really cranked up their tempo. They're now a top 100 team with regards to total possessions per game after, in past years, like when they made the run in the Sun Belt tournament last year. They were a little bit more of a slow and controlled team, but I just simply don't have a lot of faith in this Georgia Southern team really getting much of anything on the rails. They're 13.2 turnovers per game, outside the top 275 in terms of just ball protection. They don't have a single guy on the roster giving you north of 5.3 rebounds per game as Eugene Brown, along with Devontae Parker. They've been able to supply the team with a combined about 17.5 points, 10.5 boards, but just nothing too impressive there. The one thing that Georgia Southern has been able to do is shoot it relatively solid from 3-point range. Overall, they are shooting in the pocket about 35% from 3-point range, but they just don't necessarily have a lot around that as well for Georgia Southern in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They do have a fall off of about 16 points per 100 possessions when they're away from home as well, so that's pretty costly. Going against the South Alabama team that has a pair of guys in Isaiah Gator, a couple of Terrell Jones, who've been able to supply about 25 points per game, and with Gator, he's been able to shoot 38% from 3-point range, and in a nip-and-tuck game, I think that this is very important. South Alabama has each of their top 5 scorers in this game shooting at least 76% of the free throw. As a collective, they do shoot 74.8% at the charity stripe, and while you do have a South Alabama team that has certainly been giving up a little bit from 3-point range, this Georgia Southern team has been ghastly with their 3-point shooting defense as well. As Georgia Southern, they are 307th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It's a South Alabama team that has actually done a relatively solid job with this regard as well. South Alabama getting killed from 2-point range in terms of their 3-point shooting defense. They're allowing opponents to shoot 31.6% from 3, and with that being really the lone thing that Georgia Southern is doing well, I feel like this is just in general a bad matchup for them. Last time these two teams played, it was on the campus of South Alabama. That was a 78-65 triumph. Then I do think that you could get something pretty similar here. I do think that South Alabama going to do a nice job holding down a bunch in Georgia Southern that doesn't have a lot of rebounding. They're not able to really knife the ball inside. Now credit is due for Georgia Southern. They've gotten to at least 74 points in each of their last 5 games, and for South Alabama, they themselves scored at least 73 in each of their last 5 games. Do recognize that this is an early tip time, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 Eastern time, but even with the early tip time, even with this being a neutral court game, it is a pretty favorable one for the shooter's eye. So I did set my total at a 152. I'm going to be looking at the over. On South Alabama, I did make them a 4-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number of South Alabama, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over as well. 777, 778 on the betting board. Out there in Pensacola, it's Louisiana playing against Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is a underdog of 12.5 points. Total on this game between 148.5 and 149, and I said Coastal Carolina as a underdog of 11 points. Now that we've gotten to 12.5, I'm actually going to be willing to take the points with Louisiana. They have been supreme with their 3-point shooting defense, a top 5 team in all of college basketball throughout the entirety of the season. But this Louisiana team, they can be aired a little bit down low, and this is a Coastal Carolina team that they're not really looking to hoist up a whole bunch of threes. They're not looking to get fancy-dancy with that regard. But you've got a Louisiana team that in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, been much more of a fall off as they're about 318th in the country with this regard. They go up against the Coastal Carolina team that's been well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and not like this Coastal Carolina team has been some sort of a stalwart with regards to their perimeter / interior defense as well. In the interior, about 166 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Or 3-point shooting defense has been 133rd, so they've actually been able to do a solid job on that front. So they've actually been able to do a good job in terms of both of these, and yet despite the fact that in both categories. They're a top 175 team. In terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 300th. It's been very befuddling, to say the least. It's because they don't generate any turnovers. They don't necessarily do a good job of being able to hold opponents to just one and done possessions in general. So it's been a little bit of the fundamentals. But for this Louisiana team, they're not necessarily the world's greatest team at batting down the hatches on the glass as well. We've got a pair of guys in Joe Charles, coupled with Husana Kindridge, who've been able to combine for about 16 rebounds per game. They both give you between about 11.5 to 12 points per game, and gotta love the well-roundedness of Kobe Julian. 17 points, 5 boards, shoots only about 33% from 3, but all in all, it is a Louisiana team that does get some good offense flowing. They've been able to generate about 8.5 steals per game as well. And Coastal Carolina has had a tough time taking care of the ball. They turn the ball for 13 half times per contest, inside the top 300 with regards to just ball security. But you've got down low Gianna Ojiako, who's able to give you 10.5 rebounds per game. A lot of Coastal Carolina's offense has come from second and third chance opportunities as their top 5 scorers. 4 of them do give you at least 4.9 rebounds per game. Now, one of them is out of the fold, and Jimmy Nichols. We have not seen him since January, but that has been big for a Coastal Carolina team that does shoot just 66% of the free throw line. But Jacob Myers is able to supply you with about 15 points per contest. Kevin Easley, someone that's saying 6'11", he gives you about 9 points, 5 boards. He's able to give you versatility. He doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3-point range, but he's able to pop those threes. But for Coastal Carolina, they've been able to do a little bit of a better job here recently with regards to their defense. Doesn't sound like much, but they've given up 75 points or fewer for their last 5 games. And this is a Louisiana team coming in having lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and their offense has really had issues, scoring 73 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that it's Coastal Carolina team with the way that they've been able to emerge a little bit more on defense. It's enough to be able to keep them lively in this game, and I do think that this keeps the game a little bit lower scoring than expected. I did set my total at 147. Coastal Carolina with their overall shooting defense, not too bad. They just need to keep Louisiana off the glass, and Louisiana being well outside the top 150 with regards to rebound rate, I do think that they're going to be able to do so. We'll take the 12.5 here with Coastal, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under 779, 780 on the betting board. Southern Miss plays host to Texas State. Texas State is a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite total on this game. They're between 134.5 and 135, and they aren't really playing host to them because this is out there in Pensacola, Florida. I always just have a habit of saying that with the bottom team. That gets very confusing this time of year, but that said, with Southern Miss, I actually made them the favorite in this spot. I'm going to be taking a look at Southern Miss. All right, on the money line, made them a 2.5 point favorite with Southern Miss. Andre Curbelo, he's not necessarily like the savior of the team or anything like that, but he certainly does elevate the offense. Now, the full Andre Curbelo experience is when he gives you like 25 points. He'll throw in there like 5 boards. He'll give you 6 assists, and then he'll give you like 7 turnovers. He's a threat to give you a quadruple double, with turnovers being one of those attributes with it. And when he's been out there on the floor, Southern Miss has been much better offensively, much more horrible on defense as well, but he's able to elevate this team. Doesn't necessarily pop it from 3, but you've got a pair of guys in Victor Iwakar along Donovan Ivory that shoot north of 40% from 3-point range. Iwakar has been able to give you 2.2 blocks per contest. He's going to be the most dominant force in terms of shot blocking down low. Though the Texas State team, they've got the advantage on the glass. Southern Miss well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate. The Texas State team, despite the fact that they really don't have anyone other than Mr. Davion Sykes, who's giving you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. He's been able to supply 7.5 rebounds per game. They're a top 175 team with regards to rebound rate, but for Texas State, they do turn the ball over 13 times per contest, and Andre Curbelo is one of those guys that's going to gamble for turnovers. He'll sometimes come up with some of them. If he doesn't come up with one, it leads to an open shot, but it's not like this Texas State team is an amazing 3-point shooting team. Their top 3 scorers are going to be active for this game, are all shooting below 27% from 3-point range. You've been able to get Colton Benson going, with him shooting about 39% from 3. He's like the only guy in the roster, though, that shoots above 34% from distance, and that's the main kryptonite that you have with Southern Miss. Southern Miss is well outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. With that kryptonite not being unearthed, I do think that this is a good matchup for Southern Miss. Now, Texas State, they're a top 50 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage as well. And Texas State in past years wasn't the case this year. They've actually been a more efficient defense when they've been on the road rather than at home. But for Texas State, they've also gotten their offense going, scoring at least 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Southern Miss, they've gotten to at least 70 and now 3 out of their last 5 games. And last time these 2 teams played, it was 78 to 74. So I do think that Andre Curbelo being in the mix is going to cause for a little bit of higher scoring game. Set my total 136.5. I like the over, and I like Southern Miss outright on the money line. 781, 782 on the betting board. Marshall hits the road face off against Georgia State. Georgia State is a pick 'em to a 1.5 point favorite with your total 151 to 151.5. Georgia State, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the one with Marshall. This has just not been a free-flowing, clean offensive team all season long. They are well outside the top 245 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they just haven't had too many forces from the outside. I do like what Obiana Ochene-Killian has been able to bring to the table. 6 boards, 14.5 points. He throws in there a block, a steal per game, and the last time he faced off against this Georgia State team, 16 points, 7 boards, and 3 steals. So very well-rounded player there. And for Marshall, this is a pretty solid team. In terms of their rebound rate, they're in the top 225 with that regard, and this is a Georgia State team as well outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate with Nate Martin. For Marshall being able to supply 10 rebounds per game, but for Marshall, they shoot 30.5% from three-point range, and this is a Georgia State team that has been very dominant with their perimeter defense. Georgia State is a top 25 team in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Teams are shooting just 30% against them, and you've got a Marshall unit that they've had their issues on defense all season long. 295th in all of college basketball. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they're not generating the same amount of steals that they have in past years. Camden Kerfman, who was so good last season, he's down to 13 points, shooting only 34.5% from the floor. And for Georgia State, they've got the most well-rounded player out there on the floor. DeJuan Odom has been able to do it all with about 12 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists. He shoots 43% from three-point range and is able to get other guys like Lucas Taylor along with Toneri Lane, who have been able to combine for 27.5 points per game, going Georgia State, a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 76.5% of the free throw line, including each other top 4 scorers being able to give you at least a 75% free throw shooting percentage. And then you've also got Jaden Turner down for what? He's able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game, even though this bunch is going to lose the battle on the glass. They've got way more in the backcourt. This is a Georgia State team that has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of being able to guard the interior. They're going to get gashed a little bit down low, but with Marshall, even though they have been a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, they just haven't gotten a lot going on offense. 73 points or fewer in 5 out of their last 6 games. And with this Georgia State team being one that is able to guard the perimeter the way that they do, giving up 71 or fewer in 3 of the last 5 games, I do think that this is going to be lower scoring than what we saw on March 1st when these two teams had an 82-79 expose in that game. You saw it combine 18 out of 47 from three-point range. I think on a neutral court, you're going to see that bogged down a little bit. And I do think that Georgia State gets the job done much like the last time around. Set Georgia State as a favorite of 2.5 points, taking them on this rather pick 'em line / as a 1-point favorite. And looking at the under, set my total 148.5, 783, 784 on the betting board. It is Murray State, and they're going to be playing against Missouri State. This is out there from the Enterprise Center in St. Louis for the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament. And with Murray State, they're a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Totals between 139 and 140. Murray State has really come alive with their defense, giving up 73 points or fewer in all but 3 out of their last 17 games. Now, if you look at the overall metrics, they're still well outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're still well outside the top 260 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But you face off against a Missouri State team that has not been shooting it well from three-point range. For Missouri State, this is a team that really hangs their head on defense, and that has really went down the toilet bowl recently. They're down to 156th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up about 8.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home. And Murray State has a really good trio in the backcourt in Rob Perry, Quincy Anderson, along Jacoby Wood. All 3 of these guys give you between about 12.2 to 12.8 points per contest. They'll give you at least a steal per contest. And for Anderson, he's shooting 40% from 3. Wood, more like 38% from 3-point range. For a Murray State team as a top 40 team in terms of ball protection, they only turn the ball over 9.5 times per game. They go up against a Missouri State team that shoots just 31.5% from 3. The main kryptonite that you've got for this bunch in Murray State is a 3-point shooting defense, and there's really nobody other than Olsen Mason, who gives you 17.5 points, shoots about 35.5% from 3-point range, that's able to exploit that. And for Olsen Mason, he was limited to just 21 minutes in the last game against UIC. He's been dealing with some injury concerns. I have to wonder if those are acting up a little bit on him. You've had Matthew Lee do a solid job of being able to give you about 4 assists per game, but he's also been turning the ball over 3 times per contest as well. Missouri State as a whole, they do turn the ball over 12 times per contest. A little bit of an issue there now for Missouri State. A rebound rate that's in the top 70 in all of college basketball. You've got a trio of guys, NJ Benson along with Donovan Clay, throwing their chance more. That would be able to do a nice job combining for about 19.5 rebounds per game. But I do think that for Murray State, even though they're going to get decimated on the glass, they're outside the top 200 with regards to the rebound rate. As a matter of fact, outside the top 250. I do think that Nick Ellington, giving you about 6 boards per contest, block and a half per game, he's going to be able to hold his own down low. And then with just the improved backcourt play of this Murray State team, along with them playing some very good defense, playing well outside the top 250 in terms of points points allowed on a per possession basis. They slow this thing down, and they get the job done against a Missouri State team that enters this tournament in very, very bad form. So I did set my total at a 138.5. Looking at the under, as if you take a look at the Enterprise Center and what they've offered with regards to offensive production, they've got some of the most rough rims I've really ever seen. This has been just a big, giant under tournament in past years. I do expect that to be the same year. So looking at the under, and with Murray State, set them as a 4.5 point favorite. So also willing to lay the number. 785, 786 on the betting board. It is Belmont playing against Valparaiso. Valpo is a 13 to a 14 point underdog with your total between 153.5 and 154. So my total 151. I'm going to be looking at this total under. You've got a Belmont team that completely relies upon jump shooting in a arena that does not bode itself well to jump shooting. So that's going to be a little bit of an issue. Now, this Valparaiso team stinks. Last time they faced off against Belmont, they lost on their own floor 96-78. In that game, Belmont shot 12 of 21 from three-point range, but again, I think that should be bogged out now. Just because of how bad Valparaiso plays defense, Belmont is still going to get theirs for this Valparaiso team. 305th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That goes down to 33.7% away from home. It was north of 39% at home. And for Valparaiso, you've got a nice go-to scorer who's been able to supply about 16.5 points per contest. And Isaiah Safford throws in their 2 assists, 2.5 per contest, and outside of that, you've got Darius DiViero, throwing there Cooper Schweiger, and also Jahari Williamson, who have all been able to shoot a combined about 36.5% per three-point range. Between these three guys, they give you about 31 points per contest. Valparaiso well outside the top 250 in terms of rebound rate. Belmont outside the top 250 in terms of rebound rate. Malik Dia, Cade Tyson, they combine for 12 rebounds per game, and both of these guys have supplied the team with about 17 points per game. And Tyson, at 6'7", shoots 48% from three-point range for a Belmont team that overall they're shooting about 37.5% from distance. You've had Jacoby Gillespie be a really good facilitator for this bunch as well. He's able to give you about 4 assists per contest. Keyshawn Davidson, he also throws in there 4 assists per game as well. But this is a Belmont team that as well, they're turning the ball over a little bit north of 12 times per contest, and that's a big reason why, even though they've been such a good jump shooting team, that they're outside the top 100 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Good news for them, they're only scoring about 0.6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And this Valparaiso team, just again, they have not been able to get it going on offense. 314th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I do think that Valparaiso holds in there. I think that this sort of environment just bodes very, very badly for this Belmont team, and I do think that with Belmont having their issues on the glass, that allows Valparaiso to be a little bit more feisty than expected. A Valparaiso team that, keep in mind, they have scored 68 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. So going to be looking at the under, and with Valpo, set them as more of an 11-point dog, so taking the points and the under. 787, 788 on the betting board. It is Illinois State, and they're playing against Evansville. Evansville is a 3 to a 3.5 point underdog, and your total on this game is between 135.5 and 136.5, and with Evansville, I did set them as an underdog of 2 points. So you're at the 3.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points. Illinois State has been really getting lauded for their good defense, and I just don't think that it's necessarily that great for Illinois State in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are outside the top 125 nationally. Now, I will say this for Illinois State. It is defense that travels. They're actually giving up about 3.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for Evansville, they've been rough with their defense. 241st in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but now they got Ben Humaricus back in the fold. He was missing for 9 games. He's their top scorer. 15 points. Shoots 43% from three-point range. A block, 4.5 rebounds per game. Massive for an Evansville team that's outside the top 200 with regards to a rebound rate. Illinois State is actually a top 100 team with this regard. Miles Foster has been very good for this bunch. 12.5 points, 8 boards, and this is actually not an environment that's too bad for them. Illinois State has been awful from three-point range, shooting 29.5% from 3. They've really had to bail on it quite a bit. You've got Dalton Banks, who gives you about 3.5 assists per game, and Illinois State only turns the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. Problem is they don't even really do a good job with their two-point shooting. They are shooting about 42.5% from the floor. Illinois State did have that nice triumph towards the back half of the season against Indiana State, and to their credit, the team has gotten to at least 72 points in 5 out of their last 6 games, but got an Evansville unit that I do think that they're going to be able to hunker down a little bit more on defense. For Evansville is a really sad expose for them towards the back half of the season. Last time these two teams played, that was an 86-79 loss for them, in which both teams just uncharacteristically got hot from 3. Illinois State was 13 of 24 from distance. Evansville 13 of 28. I really do think that this environment could very much be bogging down the scoring in this one for Evansville. As a matter of fact, they've given up at least 78 points 5 out of their last 6 games. Prior to that run, they were actually doing a really nice job with their defense. I do think that the defense effort is going to be able to return. I do think that Hassan Toomey being able to give you about 10.5 points, 6.5 boards. That's going to be able to hold up for an Evansville team that doesn't do a bad job of taking care of the ball. About 11.5 turnovers per game. So, circumstance where I did set my line at a 2. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Evansville. I did set my total 134. I'm diving under to go along with Evansville. 789, 790 on the betting board. Southern Illinois and Illinois, Chicago. UIC do battle from the Enterprise Center. And for Southern Illinois, they are a favorite of 5 to 5.5 points. Total on this game is between 137 to 137.5. Made Southern Illinois the 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Both of these teams have been relatively solid with their defense, and both of these teams really lock you down from 3. These are a pair of teams that are in the top 45 nationally in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Southern Illinois, though, they've actually got the dynamic score to be able to help out. For Southern Illinois, they're about 132nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for UIC, they're actually a top 50 team in the country in terms of points allowed per possession in a road/neutral scoring environment. But for Southern Illinois, the elixir to that, Xavier Johnson, 22 points, 4 boards, 6 assists, shoots 36% from 3-point range, has been nothing short of magnificent. And then around him, you got a whole bunch of holes greater than the sum of its parts guys, like Clarence Rupert, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. And for Southern Illinois, they're actually a top 150 team with regards to rebound rate. The CIC team, they're well outside the top 200 with that regard. You've got Toby Okani, who's able to give you 6.5 boards, 11.5 points per game, but he's the only guy in the roster that gives you a north of 4.2 rebounds per game as Isaiah Rivera. He's had to do a lot of this by himself, 15 points, 2 assists, shoots 42% from 3 points for a UIC team that has actually shot about 37% from 3-point range. Both of these teams have been startlingly decent from 3-point range, and for the Southern Illinois team, it's been very interesting to look at their home and road splits with regards to their offense, because they're about 104th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, seeing a drop-off of about 6.5 points per 100 possessions when they're away from home. Meanwhile, you've got a UIC team that they are 291st in the country in terms of points scored per possession, scoring 10 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home, despite the fact that they do shoot it so well from 3, because they just don't have a lot on the interior, and they've been turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, with Southern Illinois doing a much better job of being able to keep a clean sheet. I do think that allows Southern Illinois to be able to break away and take hold of a game that I think is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring one again. I did set my total 134.5 looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Southern Illinois, made them a 6.5 point favorite. 791, 792 on the betting board. It is Pepperdine, and they play against Pacific. This is from Orleans Arena out here in lovely Las Vegas. Pepperdine is a 9 to 9.5 point favorite. Total's ending between 150.5 and 151. I have to question Pepperdine's mindset with knowing that Lorenzo Romar has been canned. And I mean, that's the guy that recruited a lot of these guys there. Even with that, I'm willing to lay with Pepperdine. I set them as an 11-point favorite. This Pacific team is a skid mark on the underpants of college basketball. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points scored, points allowed per possession, opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, rebound rate, their own 3-point shooting percentage. Like, there is nothing really good to say about this Pacific team. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 11 points per contest. I mean, it's just absolutely astounding how badly run this program has been. They've got one guy in Judson Martindale who's been able to help out Donovan Williams a little bit. Williams gives you 9.9 points per contest. Martindale, about 9 points per game. But you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.8 rebounds per game. Lone nice thing that I'm able to say about them is Mo Odom has been decent as a point guard. 4.5 assists, but less than 2 turnovers per game, supplies you with 9 points, only shoots 30% from 3, but I mean, he's done an okay job doling out the ball, and nobody else is able to help him out. Meanwhile, this Pepperdine team, they are outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game, but they're able to light it up in terms of their offense. You got Michael Ajay, Houston Mallett, along with Jevin Porter, who have all been able to give you at least 14.5 points per game. Mallett shoots 41.5% from 3 with about 2.5 assists thrown in with his 14.5 points per game. Porter's giving you 16 points, doesn't necessarily pop it from 3, but gives you about 5.5 boards. And Ajay, 17 points, 9.5 boards, 48% 3-point shooter. This Pepperdine team, not bad with that regard. Pepperdine, though, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting away from home, north of 45%. It's dead stinking last in all of college basketball, which really offsets the good that they do on offense. They're a top 1 to 15 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but with Pacific being as sad and pathetic as they are on offense, 345th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That's a big giant issue, and Pepperdine in the last few years, they have had such a big issue being able to win games away from home. Even they were able to take down Pacific by 19 points away from home. That was an 89 to 70 game, in which Pacific, well, they shot 3 of 10 from 3-point range. So it's a circumstance where I did set my total 153. I do think that the neutral court environment is going to be throwing these teams off a little bit, but I just flat out think that Pepperdine is going to really be able to put up a bunch of shots, be able to hit them against a Pacific team that has not been guarding a soul, and Orleans Arena has become a little bit more more shooter-friendly over the years from my observation, so looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Pepperdine, 793, 794. This is Horizon League quarterfinals. Home court environments for this one as Oakland plays those to Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne is a 3 to a 3.5 point underdog. Total on this game between 148 and 148.5. And with Oakland, I did set them as a favorite in this ordeal of 1.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the 3 to 3.5 with Fort Wayne. And honestly, out of these four matchups, this is the one where I could see the upset the most. This Fort Wayne team has been able to do a nice job of being able to knife the ball away. They're a top 50 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And this bunch does a really nice job of being able to pop it from 3-point range. For Fort Wayne, they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, considering they are a top 75 team with regards to total possessions per game. That's really good ball security, and their top 5 scores, 3 of them shoot at least 39.3% from 3-point range, with Quentin Morton Robinson, Jalen Jackson both shooting about 41% per distance, combined for about 28.5 points per game. Well, Rasheed Bello has been really the guy that has been the glue guy for them this year. 15 points, 4 assists, 1.8 steals per contest. Really like what he's been able to do since coming over from D2 UW Parkside. And here's a big kicker in this one. This Oakland team is absolutely horrible with their defense when they're at home. And in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at home, bottom 50 team in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, for Oakland, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's gotten a little bit better for them. But they're giving them north of 6 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home, rather than in a road/shoot-record environment. And for this Oakland unit, you've been able to get some good production down low from Trey Townsend. He's been able to give you 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, and this is an Oakland team that has a relatively solid rebound rate team in the middle part of all of college basketball. Fort Wayne, meanwhile, they're outside the top 250. That's really the biggest kryptonite that you got for them, especially with Oakland having had their top 5 scores. 4 of them be able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game, and Townsend, he also shoots 34.5% from 3. To the credit of Oakland, their top 4 scores, all of them shoot at least 74.5% at the free throw line, but for Oakland as well, just haven't gotten a lot out of Rocket Watts. 8 points per game, shoots less than 27% from 3-point range. Jack Golke, Blake Lampman, they've been able to combine for about 26 points per contest as well, so do like what I've seen there. But with Oakland, them just not being able to guard at home, which has been so befuddling all season long, I do think that that's going to prove to be a big giant issue. As a matter of fact, their points allowed on a per possession basis at home, more like 11.5 points more when they're at home rather than away from home, and I do think that that allows Fort Wayne to be able to hold in there in a game that I think is going to be much higher scoring as a result. Did set my total 149.5. I'm looking at the over, and I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Fort Wayne, 795, 796 on the betting board. It is Cleveland State. They hit the road. They're facing off against Youngstown St. Youngstown State, the home team, an 8.5 to a 9-point favorite. Your total on this game is 151.5, and with Youngstown State, I did set them as a favorite of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Cleveland State. Cleveland State has been able to do a relatively solid job with their defense. Offense has been a little bit more of a work in progress. They're down to shooting about 33% from 3-point range, but Tristan Enaruna, he does it all. He's able to give you 16 points, 7 boards, north of 3.5 assists per contest for a Cleveland State team that has been number 39 in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, going against a Youngstown State team that has one of the strangest home and road 3-point shooting defensive splits they're ever going to find. Youngstown State at home is allowing opponents to shoot 38.3% from 3-point range. That drops below 30% away from home. I just have no idea what to make out of it, but they have been absolutely awful with that regard. But Youngstown State, in terms of ball security, fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, one of the best teams in all of college basketball when they are at home. They've been able to get quite a bit down low out of DJ Turn It Up Burns as well. North of 13 points, north of 10 rebounds per game. Youngstown State, a top 100 team with regards to rebound rate. Cleveland State outside the top 210 with that regard. But this Cleveland State team does a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers as well. With Cleveland State, they rank 42nd in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers for us on a per possession basis, while Youngstown State, they're checking in more around 212th. With this regard, you've been able to get quite a bit out of Brett Thompson. He's someone that has been able to shoot it well from 3-point range, ships in there nearly double figures, 3+ assists per contest for this Youngstown State team. But also for Cleveland State, Enaruna has been that main man. You got Drew Lauder, Tate Williams combining for 24 points per contest. Jason Woolrich is out shooting 37% from 3-point range as well for a Cleveland State team that has some relatively good ball security themselves. Only turned the ball over 10.5 times per contest for Cleveland State. They've really been able to emerge and come to the forefront with their defense. They have given up 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. And last time they played against Youngstown State, they got the job done 81-73. And if you're wanting to expand this out a little bit more for Cleveland State, they have given given up 73 points or fewer in now 8 out of their last 9 games. I do think that Cleveland State holds up with their defense against a Youngstown St team that in regulation and regulation only has scored down 73 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. They saw Brandon Rush, who's done a nice job of being able to give you a rush of supplying the team with about 11.5 points per contest, like the game of Siggy Reed, 15 points, shoots 38% from 3-point range, but I do think that this is just a little bit too much for Youngstown State to try to cover. I did set my line at a 7, so going to be willing to take those points with Cleveland State, and did set my total 145, also looking at the under, 797, 798 on the betting board. Wright State, they hope to be the right side. They play us in Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky is an underdog of 6.5 to 7 points, but on the game between 160.5 and 161 with Wright State. I did set them as a favorite of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Northern Kentucky. This is a rematch of a game that we saw a few days ago, and Northern Kentucky, outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. Wright State, though, they are outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but a top 75 offense as well. That was a 94 to 88 harebrained game in which Wright State won because they shot 44% from 3-point range. I do think that Northern Kentucky going to be able to fare significantly better in this ordeal. Northern Kentucky has been one of your better 3-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. Now, they do go up against a team that shoots it really well from 3-point range, but for Northern Kentucky, 45th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, Trey Calvin, Tanner Olden, they're combining for about 36.5 points per contest between the two of them, shooting darn near 40% from 3. And you do have on the flip side, Marcus Wark, a little bit of a takeover scorer for this Northern Kentucky team, who put up a grand total of 59 points in the 2 regular season matchups between these two. Not shooting it well from 3. He's only shooting about 30% from distance, but against this Wright State team, he probably is going to be able to find a few holes, as for Wright State, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 340th in the country. At home, they are allowing opponents to shoot 40.6% from 3-point range. Wright State does not put any ball pressure on you as well. Now, Wright State is going to have a little bit of advantage on the Northern Kentucky team, other than Trey Robinson, who's been able to supply you with about 6 rebounds per game. They just don't have a ton down low. Meanwhile, this Wright State team has been a relatively solid team on the glass. In terms of their rebound rate, they're checking in about 112th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, with Northern Kentucky, they are more in that neighborhood of about 229th, but for Wright State, I think that this is just a little bit too big of an ask, even though you do have Brandon Noel. State will give you 14 points, 8 boards, shoot 41.5% from 3, and as a matter of fact, for this Northern Kentucky team, they have to really match up with this Wright State team that out of their top 5 players that made at least 1 3, all but one of them shooting at least 40.5% from 3, with the exception being Holden, who's been able to shoot 35.5% from 3-point range. So I do think that you get quite a few points up on the board, but I don't think that Wright State is going to be shooting 44% from distance like they did the last time around. And I do think that Northern Kentucky, a team that had given up 73 points or fewer in each of their previous 4 games prior to this, they're going to be able to slow this game down just a touch. I set my total 157. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northern Kentucky, set them as a dog of 5 points. Now here comes the DK Network right at pick, 799, 800. It is UW Green Bay playing us UW Milwaukee. Milwaukee is an underdog of a point to a point and a half. Total on this game is 145.5. My write-up is going to be on UW Green Bay. I did set them as a favorite of 4 points in the battle for the great state of Wisconsin. And yes, I wrote this up as an ode to the great state of Wisconsin, but additionally, you've got a big guy that is back in the fold after he was not there a few days ago. That'd be Noah Reynolds for UW Green Bay. And when he was out of the fold, the last time these two teams met, that was over the weekend, it was UW Green Bay who lost in that game by kind of 90 to 69. But I do think that Reynolds being back, that is just so massive. Going up against a UW Milwaukee team that has been getting completely cooked on defense. UW Milwaukee, 305th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And I mean, UW Green Bay in the first matchup won 70 to 58 at home. That was with BJ Freeman out of the fold, and you've got a pair of impactful guys. Reynolds is able to give you this UW Green Bay team 19.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. Freeman, 20.5 points, 6.5 boards, 4.3 assists on 36% 3-point shooting for UW Milwaukee. To their credit, top 20 team in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. To their detriment, they allow opponents to rebound north of 31% of their missed shots, 331st in all of college basketball. So second chances are going to be very plentiful on both sides in this one for UW Milwaukee. I just feel like they don't put as much around Mr. BJ Freeman, even though you do have a pair of double-figure scorers in Eric Pratt along with Kentrell Pullian. These two guys combined for about 23 points. Pratt is able to shoot 36% from 3, but UW Green Bay really embraces a whole is greater than some of its parts approach around Noah Reynolds. You've got Elijah Jones, who's been able to give you 6.5 boards, shoots about 53.5% from 3, and Your next top 4 scorers outside of Noah Reynolds in the lineup for UW Green Bay, they all shoot at least 37.5% from 3. You've got a bunch of nice snipers on this team, and that's where I think UW Green Bay is going to be able to win this game. Now, they do shoot just 32.5% from 3-point range at home, and they take north of 50% of their shots when they're at home from 3-point range. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, but they face off against the UW Milwaukee team that's 218th in the country with regards to 3-point shooting percentage by their opponents. Meanwhile, for UW Milwaukee, when they're on the road, they're a top 100 team with regards to percentage of their shots that they take from 3. UW Green Bay, 13th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This UW Green Bay team has been able to play some better defense, and when they were without our good friend in Noah Reynolds, they were giving up right around about 10 points more per 100 possessions rather than with them in the fold. I think that with UW Green Bay getting them back, it's not going to just improve their offense, but it's going to improve their defense as well. Now, I do think that this is going to be another hair-burning game by UW Milwaukee. They just have been specializing in those, scoring at least 75 points each of their last 5 games, and for UW Milwaukee, they had been scoring fewer than 70 points at each of their last 5 games, but keep in mind pretty much all of that was without Noah Reynolds in the fold. When they did have Noah Reynolds in those previous, I would say, 4 games, they got into at least 78 points in every one of them. So did set my total 148. I like the over in my write-up. That is on UW Green Bay laying this number. 801, 802 on the betting board. Tennessee State is going to be playing against Western Illinois. This is out there at the Ford Center in Evansville. Right now, we've got Western Illinois between a 2 to a 3-point favorite. Your total on this game is 134.5. I said Tennessee State as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be taking a look at them. All right, on the money line. For Tennessee State, they've got down low Jason Thibodeau, who's been able to supply nearly 3 blocks per contest, going against a Western Illinois team that, while they have been very dominant with their defense, a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they lock you down from 3-point range as well. Top 75 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And in terms of their overall rebounding, you've got one of the best rebounders in all of college basketball. Drew Cisse, 8.5 points, is 11.1 rebounds per game. It's number 6 in all of college basketball. This Western Illinois team is also outside the top 3 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They turn the ball over 13 times per contest while being a low-tempo team, shooting 61.8% the free throw line. You get into a nip-and-tuck game, and that is really going to be costly for this team. You do have a pair of guys in the backcourt and Ryan Myers along James Stent Jr., who do combine for about 25 points per contest. They are able to combine for about 4 assists per game as well, and Myers is able to shoot 41% from 3-point range, but with Tennessee State, just have a lot more in the backcourt in general. Tennessee State is outside the top 200 with regards to the rebound rate, but the Tennessee State unit has been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to guard the 3-point line in their own right. For Tennessee State, they were entering into yesterday allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from distance. That does balloon up to about 36% away from home, but with Keenan Hodges, along with Christian Brown, E.J. Bellinger, being able to supply the team with about 34.5 points per contest. That's going to be a good elixir. You've got Brown and Bellinger shooting combined about 36.5% from 3-point range. It's a Tennessee State team that, in their own right, they do turn the ball over 13 times per game, but for Western Illinois and all that they do right on defense, they don't force any turnovers. They're averaging about 5.2 steals per contest. That is well outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. To the credit of Western Illinois, they've been able to crank up the offense a little bit more, scoring 68 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. And the last time these two teams played, it was Western Illinois went on the road, got the job done by kind of 68-61 on a night where Tennessee State shot 33% from the floor, 4 of 17 from 3. I like this Western Illinois defense. I don't think that they're going to be able to quite duplicate that. I do think that Tennessee State finds a way to be able to get it done. I like Tennessee State outright on the money line, and did set my total 132. I think that you're in for another slog between these two, so I'm going to have the under and Tennessee State outright on the money line. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we get the extra games, 803, 804 more. I'd say it's going to be playing against SIU Edwardsville. No numbers up on this game as both of these teams played yesterday. Actually, I'm seeing one pop up right now. The opening number is more, I'd say, a 9-point favorite without a total as of right now, and if we do get that 9, I'd be willing to take Edwardsville. I said Edwardsville as an 8-point underdog, and maybe my total 132 at 131.5 or less. Going to be taking a look at the over at 132.5 or higher. Taking a look at the under with Edwardsville. This team has been rough with regards to their defense outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you saw them be really good on defense last season, and I still do think that they sort of have it in them, for lack of a better term. You've got DeMarco Minor has been very major for this team at just 6 feet tall, 15.5 points, 8.5 boards, 3 assists per game. He's a really good versatile player going up against a Morehead St team that's going to be able to win that battle down low. Morehead State, top 50 team with regards to rebound rate. A lot of that thanks to Riley Minix. 10 boards, 20.5 points, a steal, a block per contest. Shoots about 34% from three-point range. I know that Jordan Lathan has been a little bit in and out of the fold, but I expect him to play in this one. 16 points, 6 boards, shooting about 37.5% from the outside for a Morehead State team that they still aren't necessarily the world's most efficient offense in all of college basketball, but it's a lot better than it was a season ago. They're turning the ball over 12 times per contest, which is quite a bit of improvement from last season. Morehead State, 89th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they do register about 11.2 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. And you've got an Edwardsville team that's about 233rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But I do like what the Wright brothers are able to bring to the table. Shamar Wright, 14.5 points, shoots 34% from three. Lamar Wright, he chips in there about 10 points. And you've got an Edwardsville team that out of their top 5 scores, all but one of them do give you north of 4 rebounds per game. I think that that's going to be massive for an Edwardsville team that does a good job of being able to take care of the ball. Only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, and they're the team that does a better job of being able to generate turnovers as well against a Morehead State team that, to their credit, they've been able to give up 57 points of fear in each of their last 3 games. So at a 131.5 or less, we're going to have the over 132.5 or higher to the under end, with Morehead State did set them as a favorite of 8 points, so at the 9 I'd be willing to take that. Now let's hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-549, 306-550. Morgan State plays against Coppin St. Coppin State, a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog with your total 141, and I said Coppin State as an underdog of 9 points. I'm going to be willing to lay at Morgan State. It's been really scuffling all season long, both on offense and on defense. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And a little bit of credit where it is due. Coppin State has been a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And Coppin State, if you look at their points allowed on a per possession basis, we're on 217th in all of college basketball. But for Morgan State, they're going to have the best scorer out there on the floor. That'd be Winston Tabbs. He began his career over at Boston College. He's been able to log for the team north of 16 points per contest. And this Morgan State team has been getting a little bit healthier as the season goes along. They're still without the St. Francis of Pennsylvania transfer in Miles Thompson, but they've been able to have Will Thomas be able to supply the team with 13 points, 4 boards. He's not shooting it well from three-point range, but Cameron Hobbs is. He's able to shoot 37% from the outside, giving the team 10.5 points per game. And if it comes down to late-game fouling with regards to cover, each of your top 4 scorers for this Morgan State team do shoot at least 79% of the free throw line. Morgan State is turning the ball over about 14.5 times per contest. That's going to be able to help out this Coppin State unit. And for Morgan State, certainly has been a little bit of an issue with them being able to just hit the glass in general. But for Coppin State, this is a bottom 75 team with regards to their rebound rate. They really don't have anyone other than Justin Winston that does a good job on that regard. You don't have anyone outside of him with north of 4.2 rebounds per game. And for Winston, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 30% from 3 for a unit then is in the bottom 15 in all of college basketball in terms of ball security. They shoot from three-point range about 28.5% from the outside. They shoot 37.7% from the floor as well. That's just absolutely deplorable. And for this Coppin State team, being the second worst team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, going up against a Morgan State team that has had their issues on the glass all season long as well, but at the very least, they're able to give you a more respectable effort. I do think that this is going to be rough for a Coppin State team that legitimately just doesn't have anyone else to really complement Mr. Winston. You've had George Spurlock be able to give you about 8.5 points per contest. Ryan Archie, he chips in there 9 points per game, but you legitimately don't have anyone outside Malik Battle shooting above 32.5% from three-point range. And Morgan State, I do think is going to be able to overwhelm in this spot and be able to do a nice job of holding up on defense against a Coppin State team that just has not been able to get it going all season long. For this Coppin State team, they have scored fewer than 70 points in every single one of their games since the beginning of the month of February, and I do think that that stretch continues here. I did set my total at a 139. I'm looking under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Morgan State. Made them a 9-point favorite. 36-551, 36-552. It is NC Central playing us to South Carolina State. South Carolina State, a 6 to a 7-point underdog with your total 143.5, and with South Carolina State, I did set them as a underdog in this spot of 6.5 points. So here at the 7, that would be my buy point on them. This was actually an opener of 4.5, and I personally can tell you I took this number a little bit earlier, so I was personally willing to lay with NC Central. I think that once you hit 7, though, the value is just gone. This is an NC Central team that got steamed up very much a few nights ago as well and lost that game outright to Morgan State, so do take a little bit of caution there. But for NC Central, the reason why I did bet them a little bit earlier on is that you've got a trio of guys: Fred Cleveland Jr., just Jadarius Harris, and Po'boy King. They combine for about 45.5 points per contest. And between the three of them, they all shoot at least 75.5% from the free throw line. They've been able to do a nice job pulling together to be able to give you about 4 steals per contest for an NC Central team that has been one of the best in all of college basketball at being able to lock teams up from three-point range. With NC Central, they allow opponents to shoot from three-point range. It's 29.4%. That is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. And for South Carolina State, they legitimately do not have a single player on the roster that averages north of 9 points per game. Now, they do have a little bit more down low on NC Central. Emmanuel Izabuner is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, while Davion Everett, he should be able to control things down low for a South Carolina State team that hasn't been awful with their defense, but for South Carolina State, they've got massive home and road splits with them, as they are averaging about 19 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/shoot record environment rather than at home. They're one of the most deplorable offenses in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, the defense, it has been there for South Carolina State, 198th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They only give up about a point and a half more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for South Carolina State, credit where credit is due. They've given up 68 points of fear in each of their last 5 games. They're on a 5-game winning streak, but this NC Central team, they've been able to really get it going on offense as well, at least 79 points in each of their last 4 games. And it's a defense that they themselves have now given up fewer than 60 points in 2 of their last 4 games. I do think that for South Carolina State, just not having any sort of a go-to guy. Mitchell Taylor gives you 8.5 points, about 2 assists per contest. They don't have a main facilitator. They turn the ball over 15 times per contest. They can't operate their offense away from home. That is going to be a big issue for them with NC Central. If you can get a 6, and I'm seeing a few out there, I'd still be willing to lay that. I'm willing to lay 6 with NC Central before I'm willing to take 7 with South Carolina State, and I personally did take the opener in this spot on NC Central, so willing to lay up to 6 there. And with this total, I did set it at 142.5. I just don't think that South Carolina State does their part with this total. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with NC Central, 306.553, 306.554. Delaware State is going to be on the road facing off against Maryland Eastern Shore. Maryland Eastern Shore, 3.5 to a 4.5 point home underdog. Total in this game between 133.5 and 134.5. With Maryland Eastern Shore, I did set them as an underdog of 4 points. Personally, I'd rather lay 3.5 than take 4.5. This Maryland Eastern Shore team just has not been able to get anything going whatsoever outside the top 335 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, I like Troy Hupstead. He's been able to give you about 13.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, but Delaware State is legitimately a top 125 team in terms of both rebound rate and in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while Maryland Eastern Shore, even though they've got Hupstead, who actually might be the best rebounder in this game, they're just 322nd in all of college basketball in terms of their overall rebound rate with this Maryland Eastern Shore team. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they've actually been relatively solid on this front, ranking 96th in the country with that regard, and that's where Delaware State can be at. They're 328th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but Javion Munoz, along with Martez Robinson, have for Delaware State being able to supply you with about 31 to 32 points per contest. These two guys combined to shoot 34% from 3, and with Delaware State being a top 75 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Well, that was the forte of Maryland Eastern Shore a season ago, and now that is completely gone. I think that's a bit of an issue. You've been able to have Chance Davis be able to chip in there only about 6.5 points per contest, and for Maryland Eastern Shore, you've got 2 guys on the roster that give you north of 6.7 points per game. Along with Hupsey, you've been able to get about 11.5 points per game out of Devin Ellis. He only shoots about 26.5% from 3-point range, with Maryland Eastern Shore being well outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. I do think that Delaware State, with their defense, going to be able to take hold against a Maryland Eastern Shore team that has scored 56 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. So, to set my total 132, diving under, and I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with Delaware State. Would rather lay 3.5 than take 4.5 with them. 306.555, 306.556. Alabama A&M is going to be playing against Grambling. Grambling is a favorite between 2.5 to 3 points, and total on this game, you're going to be getting it anywhere between 133.5 and 134. And with Grambling, I did set them as a favorite of 3 points. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. This Grambling unit has been able to play much better defensively here in conference rather than outside the conference, and still been a little bit rough and tough to go with them, but I do think that they're going to do a nice job of overwhelming an Alabama A&M team that legitimately does not have a single guy on the roster giving you north of 4.3 rebounds per game. They've been having some nice production with Cameron Tucker this season, main point guard, so he will give you 8.5 points, 4.5 boards, right around 4 assists per contest. It looked like he might have an injury scare a little bit ago, but he was able to return back in the fold, but has now given the team 4+ turnovers in each of the last 3 games. That you've got a Grambling team that, while they're not like amazing with regards to being able to generate turnovers, they still get about 7.5 steals per game, as you've got Contavious Dozier, along Trey Michael Morton, who are able to combine for just under 3 steals per contest. Both of these guys shoot about 32.5% from 3 points for a Grambling team that is turning the ball over about 13 times per contest. Both of these teams have their warts offensively. Grambling, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're clocking in 323rd in all of college basketball, though I will say they're actually averaging as many points per possession away from home as they are at home. And for Alabama A&M, 343rd in all of college basketball. Alabama A&M has been able to get a little bit of three-point shooting this season with the 33% out of Dalen Smith, who's been able to give you 14 points per contest, but he's the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 9 points per contest. And outside of him, there's really nobody else that gives you north of 32.6% from three-point range on this roster. Alabama A&M, bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of retaining the ball, turning the ball over 16.5 times per contest. And for this Alabama A&M team, they've just been stuck in the mud with their offense. 61 points or fewer scored in each of their last 3 games. And for this Grambling team, they have really been able to step it up in terms of their defense. For Grambling, they have given up north of 70 points just once since the beginning of the month of February, and I do think that they're going to be able to hold up defensively here. They've been able to have Jonathan Aku be able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, with Alabama A&M once again being well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate. I do think the Grambling going to be able to win from within, so by total 133. So here at the 134, diving in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 for the Grambling. 306-557, 306-558. Alcorn State plays us at Mississippi Valley State. The Delta Devils of Mississippi Valley State, an 18 to an 18.5 point underdog with your total 132. And with Mississippi Valley State, I did set them as a underdog of 17.5 points. I am going to be willing to take the 18 to an 18.5. I think we've just gone a little bit too far here. This Alcorn State team still has been rough with their defense. They're still well outside the top 3 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. I will say has been much better recently. In regulation, they have now given up 68 points of fear in 4 of their last 5 games, and they're riding a 7-game win streak. And for Mississippi Valley State, it's just still all kinds of awful with their offense. They have scored 57 points for fear in 4 of their last 5 games, but they might actually have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Raekwon Brown. 18.5 points, 6 boards, a steal on 32% three-point shooting for him. But for Mississippi Valley State, they're bottom 5 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, along turnovers on a per possession basis. Fortunately for them, Alcorn State not necessarily too beastly in terms of generating turnovers, but they should be able to win this battle down low. Jeremiah Kendall being able to give you 16.5 points, 7 boards per contest, and it's an Alcorn State team that they shoot about 33% from three-point range. Jeremiah Gambrell, he's been able to give you a double-figure amount of points. He shoots 42% from three-point ranges for an Alcorn State team that they need all of it, because in terms of their just overall opponent's three-point shooting percentage outside the top 275, though, Alcorn State actually a team that ranks 141st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. A lot of the thanks to Kendall, but on top of that, you've been able to get about 4.5 boards per contest out of Stephen Byard. He's been able to do a solid job with that regard, while Mississippi Valley State 342nd in all of college basketball with regards to the rebound rate, and just have such limited production with this Mississippi Valley State team, as right now on the roster you've got 4 guys that give you north of 3.9 points per contest and 2 guys that give you north of 3.1 rebounds per game. That said, I do think that we've went just a hair too far here. This is a circumstance where I set this line at a 17.5, so willing to take 18 plus here with the Mississippi Valley State. I did set my total 135.5. Alcorn State has been playing a little bit more up-tempo, and for Mississippi Valley State, they are coming off of scoring 69 points against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and they themselves have given up points all season long to an Alcorn State team that has scored at least 73 points in all each of their last 4 games. So looking at the over and the points with the Mississippi Valley State, 36-559, 36-560. It is Jackson State, and they're going to be playing against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and with Pine Bluff, they're a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog with your total 154. And with Arkansas Pine Bluff, I did set them as a underdog of 7.5 points. Here at the 8, that is my buy point on them. Pine Bluff has been in the bottom 5 in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, but they've actually done a nice job of being able to guard from three-point range. And for Arkansas Pine Bluff, that's where they're going to need to win this battle, because they've got a trio of guys in Joe French, Rashad Williams, Kylan Milton. They have been absolutely amazing snipers from three-point range. These 3 guys combined for about 15.5 points per contest. They all shoot at least 36.5% for 3, and Pine Bluff is a top 50 team in college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Their three-point shooting defense is relatively solid. 2-point shooting defense has been an absolute wreck. They're 355th in all of college basketball in that regard, so they're certainly going to be giving it up inside, but 66th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage away from home. They allow opponents to shoot just 31.5% from three-point range. Jackson State, they do turn the ball over about 14.5 times per game. They've been dealing with a little bit of ailment out there in the backcourt. They still have Ken Evans, who's able to give you 18 plus points per contest. Then you've got Zeke Cook down low, who's been able to give you about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game. But the big bugaboo that you got for Jackson State right now is Chase Adams, who is averaging about 4.5 assists per game. He's been in and out of the fold recently for this team, and Credit where credit is due. Jackson State does have the biggest elixir to this Pine Bluff offense. They're a top 65 team themselves in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they've been playing some harebrained and crazy games as well, getting to at least 70 points for their last 5 games for Pine Bluff. They haven't been quite as up-tempo here in conference as they were out of conference, but this is still a Pine Bluff team that has been able to get to at least the 70-point plateau in all but one of the last 5 games. Jackson State was able to hold them to 63 points first time around. That was a game where Pine Bluff shot just 6 of 29 from 3, and while Jackson State is really good at being able to guard the 3-point arc, I do think that Pine Bluff going to be able to get a little bit more going here this time around. I do think that this total is relatively right now that we've revisited up to a 154 plus. Going to be looking at the under semi-total 153.5, as I do think that Pine Bluff heats up, but at the same time they have slowed down a little bit with their tempo. So looking at the under, and with Pine Bluff willing to take 8 with them, set them as a 7.5 point underdog. 3-6-5-61, 3-6-5-62. Alabama State plays us to Southern. Southern is a pick 'em to a 1-point favorite with your total 131.5. I did set Southern as the favorite in this ordeal of 2 points, so I'm going to be willing to take them. For Southern, no question about it, this has been a team that has been much better with their defense when they've been at home rather than in a roadside neutral court venue, but this is still one of the better defenses that you're going to find out there in the SWAC, and that's not saying much because the SWAC doesn't have necessarily the world's greatest defense in the world, but in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, Southern checking in 89th in all of college basketball. They are giving up about 25 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and it's an Alabama State team that has been able to do a relatively solid job with their defense as well. They're 59th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Alabama State just does not have any offense to speak of. They've got the just father-son duo going on, and Tony Madlock with the son TJ Madlock being a do-it-all player for this team. 15.5 points, 5 boards. He's able to throw out a few assists, 1.7 steals per contest, but one thing he doesn't do, pop it from 3-point range. Shoots 19% from 3. This is an Alabama State team that overall they shoot 37.2% from 2-point range, 28% from 3-point range. Only turn the ball over 11.5 times per contest, but still outside the top 340 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. This is a Southern team that's getting absolutely tattooed on the glass, or outside the top 275 with that regard to Alabama State. They've got things won on the glass, but you now have someone in Derek Tizano who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. The big issue for this team has been dealing with the injury to Tayron Joseph. We have not seen him since February 3rd. Figures to be out of the fold here, but Johnny Diabasi along with Brandon Davis, these two guys are giving you about 21.5 points per contest. Diabasi has been able to do a nice job giving you about 5.5 assists per contest as well. It is a Southern team that they get into a little bit of trouble with regards to turnovers, as they've been turning the ball over about 14 times per contest, but they do a really nice job of being able to take it back against an Alabama State defense that they do give it up a little bit from 3-point range. We're about 238th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That bogs down to about 32% when they're at home, but both of these teams, they're relatively solid with the way that they do generate turnovers, but Southern just a little bit better in this spot. Southern is a team that does rank in the top 50 with regards to turnovers force on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got an Alabama State team that's checking in right around 44th with this regard. I do think that Southern, they just have a little bit more in the backcourt, and with Alabama State just not having a single guy out there on the floor that can really hit a shot, I do think that this turns into a low-scoring slog that Southern is able to pull out. I did set my total 134. I think that this game is going to be close enough for late game following, and this is a Southern unit that I do think that they start to pick it up a little bit more on offense without Tayron Joseph going up against an Alabama State team that's now given up north of 70 points in 3 out of their last 5 games, with the lone opponents that they held below the 70-point plateau being Mississippi Valley State and Alabama A&M. So looking at the over and Southern on this pick 'em line, 306-563, 306-564. Norfolk State is going to be playing us Howard. Howard is a 4.5 to a 5.5 point underdog with your total 146. And with Howard, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. So here at the 4.5 mark, that would be my buy point on Norfolk State, and between 4.5 and 5.5, I would rather take the 5.5 with Howard rather than lay the 4.5, just because with Howard, you just have a little bit more firepower in general. This is a bunch that is going to turn the ball over about 15 times per contest, and this is a Norfolk State team that they do a nice job being able to generate turnovers. They're a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to steals on a per possession basis, and to the credit of the Norfolk State team, they've been able to really put it up with regards to their offense. At least 69 points for their last 5 games, despite being outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game. But with Howard, you've got a pair of guys in Seth Downs along with Bryce Harris, who are combined for 31 points per contest between the two of them. They shoot nearly 40% from three-point range. Now, Norfolk State, they're actually number 10 in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. While Howard, they allow opponents to shoot 25.5% from three-point range at home. That balloons up to sub 37% when they're away from home. So that's a big, giant issue. But you've also got a Norfolk State team that just really doesn't have anything on the glass. Jelani Darden, he's been able to give the team about 5 rebounds per game. He's their leader in rebounds for a Norfolk State team that's about 249th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Howard, not necessarily amazing on this front either, but they're still right around about 91st. You've had Shai Odom be relatively solid in his time over at Howard. He's been a little bit in and out of the fold. He's probably going to be out once again, but Marcel Dockery has done a nice job being able to pick up the mantle. He's been able to give the team 13.5 points per contest, and then Don Campbell, he's been able to give you some nice production down low as well. Coming off of a 7-rebound game against Delaware State, he's been able to give the team about 8 points per contest, not really good at popping from three-point range, but you've also got a Norfolk State team that's very hit or miss from three-point range as well. You've had Jamari Thomas come in from UNC Wilmington, supplies 17.5 points, shoots 39% from three, but all in all, this team does shoot about 33% from the outside. It's a Norfolk State team that does have their offensive deficiencies, despite the fact that they have been getting a little bit warmer recently for Norfolk State in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're still only about 152nd in all of college basketball, and they only see a bump of about 1 point more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And I do think that Howard going to do a nice job of holding in there against a Norfolk State team that has gotten warm with regards to their overall offense, but they don't necessarily do a great job on the glass that allow Howard to be able to get some second and third chances. Did set my total 145 because this Norfolk State team does such a good job of guarding the three-point line. So going to be willing to take 5.5 here with Howard, and you're at the 146. Going to be diving in on the under as well. 306-565, 306-566. This is the ASUN semifinal. Stetson plays us to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is an underdog of 6 points. Your total on this game, it is 138.5, and with Jacksonville, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 6 with Jacksonville. They've gotten Bryce Workman back in the fold, and that has been massive for them now. Jacksonville, they're giving up north of 16 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but when Workman was out of the fold, this was one of the most deplorable and sad defenses in all of college basketball. But you look at what Jacksonville has been able to do recently in a conference just full of up-tempo teams, and they've really been able to hold them down as they have given up north of 70 points in only 3 out of their last 10 games. For Jacksonville, you do have a nice go-to scorer in Robert McCray, who's been able to give the team 18 points, shoots about 34.5% from three-point range. Now, Jacksonville does turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, but Stetson not a team that's going to go out there and generate turnovers outside the top 250 with that regard. The biggest key is holding up with regards to the three-point shooting defense, because Jacksonville, they allow opponents to shoot less than 30% from three-point range at home. That balloons up to north of 36% away from home, but again, a lot of that was without Bryce Workman in the fold. Stetson is shooting as collective about 36% from three, with Jalen Blackman giving you 39% three-point shooting, 21.5 points per contest. Open Getsirse has been able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game, and for that matter, out of your top 4 scorers, all but one of them do give you at least 4.5 rebounds for Stetson, including a 40% three-point shooter in Alec Oglesby. But even with Marcus Nyblack out of the fold, I do think that for Jacksonville, they're still going to have enough backcourt play to be able to get it done here. You've got Josiah Boom Boom Powell is able to give you 9 points per contest. He's been able to shoot about 32.5% from three-point range. And I was mentioning Nyblack being a little bit banged up. He's returned to the fold. He's been very inconsistent. He has scored 2 points or fewer in 3 out of the last 4 games that he's been back for. But I do think that just his presence alone and being able to dole out the ball a little bit in Jacksonville, being a top 100 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, that's going to keep them lively. And I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be a little bit slowed down. Stetson already outside the top 3 with regards to total possessions per game. Last time these two teams played, Stetson actually won that game 86-73, but Jacksonville in that game, they allowed Stetson to shoot 13 of 27 from 3. I think that they're going to tighten up the screws here and be able to get this game a little bit more played on their turn. Set my line at 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Jacksonville. And did set my total 137. I'm also looking at the under. 306-567, 306-568. It is North Alabama on the road facing off against Austin Peay. And Austin Peay is a 3.5 to a 5-point underdog with your total 148.5. And with Austin Peay, made them a 4.5 point favorite. Here at the 5, that is my pipeline on North Alabama, but I'd rather lay the 3.5, and we're mostly seeing 3.5 to 4.5 here, so I'm going to be willing to buy in on Austin Peay, because this Austin Peay team, since the beginning of the month of February, they have scored at least 75 points in every single game, and they get to go up against a North Alabama team that's well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, with Austin Peay, they're well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis as well, but much of that has been coming just just with regards to their interior play, S&P, they are allowing opponents to shoot about 34.9% from three-point range, but being able to get Marcus Sharp back in the fold, that's big. 17 points, 6+ boards. He's able to throw in there 4 assists. He was missing for darn near the entirety of the month of February, but without him, they discovered Isaac Haney's able to pop in for 3, shooting in the high 30s from three-point range. You've been able to get Desi Jones to give you double figures, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Javonte Black is shooting over 40% from 3, with being able to supply the team with also a double-figure amount of points. And then you take a look at this North Alabama team, and they've had a really tough time being able to guard the three-point arc this far this season for the North Alabama unit. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they are well outside the top 225 with that regard, and I do think that for North Alabama, it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to be able to match up shot for shot. Now, they do have down low a little bit of a nice elixir for this team, as they've been able to get about 8 or so rebounds per game out of Damian Forrest. Meanwhile, you've been able to have Jakari Lane be able to team up with KJ Johnson in the backcourt. These two guys combined for about 29 points per contest. Well, Lane, he's able to shoot 36% from three-point range, and this North Alabama team does a really nice job of being able to take care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 10.3 times per contest. That is a top 75 mark in all of college basketball, but I do think that for North Alabama, them just not having necessarily a lot of consistency with regards to their defense. As I was mentioning a little bit before, having such a tough time guarding the arc, 277th in all of college basketball. And spoke out of turn. I said Austin P was outside the top 200 with that regard. That's their two-point shooting defense. They're more like 162nd in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I do think that they're going to be able to hold up. They've really been able to find a way to be able to take good care of the ball as well, turning the ball over fewer than 10.5 times per contest themselves. I do think that Austin P going to be a little bit more efficient, and they have found their offense. I said my total 152.5 looking at the over. With Austin P, want to lay the 3.5 that I'm seeing with them, would rather lay the 3.5 than take the 5. 306.569, 306.570. Colgate plays with Holy Cross. Holy Cross is a underdog of 18 points, and your total on this game, you're going to be getting it at a 142. I did set Colgate as a 16.5 point favorite here at 18. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Holy Cross. Fully recognize that Holy Cross is outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are 359th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, going against a Colgate team that's a top 80 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and Colgate is 14th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But Holy Cross is starting to find a little bit of something. They were without Bo Montgomery throughout much of the season. He's been able to do a nice job giving this team double figures a little bit from the outside as well. And this Holy Cross team, they're starting to find a little bit more down low. Colgate has been a top 200 team with regards to rebound rate. Holy Cross really doesn't compare with that regard, but Caleb Kenny is out giving you about 6 boards per contest, a little bit of versatility out of him, and then you've been able to get darn near 40% three-point shooting out of Joe Nugent, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, while Joe Octave has been that do-it-all guy. He's been able to supply this team with about 15 points, throws in there about 6 boards. He doesn't necessarily pop it well from three-point range, but has been able to give this team 17 plus points throughout the last 4 games. They're able to carry him. Meanwhile, with Braden Smith on the flip side for Colgate, he's been the do-it-all sort of guy for Colgate. They have one every single year. This year at Smith, 5.8 assists, 5 boards, 12 points. Only shoots out about 32.5% from 3. In Colgate, they're still a good three-point shooting team. They shoot 36.9% from the outside. Typically, this is a top 10 unit with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and that's just not the case this season. Now, with Holy Cross, they've been an okay team at being able to take care of the ball, but they themselves don't generate a lot of turnovers. But Colgate is not a team that necessarily does so as well. Both of these teams well outside the top 225 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and with this Colgate team having just not the same offense that they have in past years. They have scored now 67 points or fewer for their last 5 games. Lone exception was when they played against Holy Cross last. That was a 77-58 game in which Colgate shot 53.5% from the floor. I do think that that's going to be a little bit of an issue for this Colgate team trying to cover this big of a number. As a result, I set my total 138.5. I'm looking at the under with Colgate. Set them as just a 16.5 point favorite. One take the 18 here with Colgate. 306.571, 306.572. American plays us at Bucknell. Bucknell is a 4.5 to a 5-point underdog with your total 128. Set Bucknell as a 4-point dog. I'm going to be one to take the 5 with Bucknell. Team has been very much up and down this season under year number 1 of John Griffin, but I do believe that they've got 2 guys that can be difference makers. You've got Jack Forrest, 16 points, 5 boards, shoots 37.5% from 3 and a 7-footer, and Noah Williamson, who gives you a block and about 12 points, 6 rebounds per game, while Evan Edmonds has been able to do a nice job, be able to give the team about 4.5 assists per game. And for American, it's a top 140 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They have been a little bit touch and go, though, with regards to the defensive effort. American outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, despite having having Mark Rogers and his versatility. 6 boards, 16.5 points, shoots 37% from 3, and Elijah Stevens. He's been able to supply this team with about 12.5 points per contest. He does a nice job giving up 5 assists per contest, and after American turned the ball over north of 14 times per contest last season. That's down to about 11 this season, but for American, 338th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while they do go up against a Bucknell team that allows opponents to shoot just 32.5% from 3-point range away from home, and that's really been the bread and butter for this American team. You've been able to have someone like a George Bruce be able to give you about 9 points, shoots 38% from 3-point range, and all in all, it is an American team that they shoot 35.5% from 3, but it's one of the worst teams in all of college basketball with regards to their block shot rate. This is American bunch that they're not necessarily horrible on the glass with all that you're able to get out of Mark Rogers, but I do think that Bucknell is going to be able to hold their own on the glass. They're about 237th in the country with regards to the rebound rate. American is about 118th, but I do like the way that Bucknell has been able to surge, and with them being able to guard the arc the way that they are, and with this Bucknell team playing very good defense, 62 points of fear surrender for their last 5 games, I do think that this is going to be a relatively tight game. Set my line at 4, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bucknell, and did set my total at 134. I'm also going to be taking a look at this total over with the way that Bucknell has been able to stroke it a little bit from 3-point range, and the way that American gives it up on defense as well. 306-573, 306-574. Lafayette plays us with Lehigh. Lehigh is going to be a 2.5 to a 3.5 point road favorite. Total on this game 137 to 137.5. Can only make Lehigh a 3-point favorite. This opened up at 4, and personally, I would still rather take the 3.5 rather than lay the 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Lafayette. Lafayette, a top 120 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Lehigh, good news for them. Their number 2 scorers back in Keith Higgins. He was out of the fold for about 9 games. He and Tyler Whitney City combined for about 28.5 points per contest. And both of these guys shoot between 31 and 34% from 3-point range. But for Lehigh, you really just don't have a lot of outside forces for this team. You've got one guy in the roster that's able to shoot north of 35.5% from 3-point range, Bube Muma. And with him, he's only taken, I believe, 15 threes thus far this season. So you don't really have anyone that consistently takes threes that's able to shoot above 35% from distance, and that's going to be very, very big because this is a Lafayette team that they have been all over the place with regards to their perimeter defense all season long, about 150th in the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but I do think that for Lafayette, a team that does not have a single guy that gives you north of 10 points per contest, that's going to be very key against a Lehigh team that's well outside the top tier with regards to a rebound rate. Dom Perlin is the only guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Lafayette, they do have a 7-footer in Justin Vanderbont who gives you about 5.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest, and for Lafayette, it is going to be the whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach. While they don't have a single player that gives you double figures, you got 4 separate guys that do give you at least 9 points per game. They're now shooting about 31.5% from 3-point range, and they might have the best 3-point shooter in this game in Eric Soderberg, who's been able to shoot about 39.5% from 3-point range. It's a Lehigh team has really been all over the place this season. They're coming in playing actually some very good defense. They have given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. They've also scored 71 points or fewer in each of their last 3 as well. I do think that this turns into a little bit more of a slog. Lehigh has been in the top 150 with regards to total possessions per game, but has slowed down recently. So set by a total at 133, diving under. And with Lafayette, we'll take anything north of 3 with them. 365.75, 365.76. Boston U plays us to Navy. Navy is a underdog of 4 to 4.5 points. Total on scheme between 132.5 and 133. Set by a total of 130.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Boston U is outside the top 325 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And they go up against a Navy team as a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Boston U turning the ball over about 12 times per contest. Not great, not terrible. And for Navy, they're about 304th in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. Boston U 313. So you're going to get a little bit of a low-scoring slog in this one, in my opinion, even though it is a Navy team that has slipped outside the top 150 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And you do have a Boston U team that is a top 80 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but Boston U is actually giving up 11 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral venue, and they've only got one double-figure score. That'd be Miles Brewster. So they would give you 11 points per contest. Navy getting tattooed on the glass outside the top 250 with that regard. So Otto Landrum, he given this Boston U team right around about 5.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. I think that that's going to be big. And just take a look at this Boston U team. I mean, each of their top 7 scorers, I believe that one is going to be out of the fold for this game. They all give you at least 3.8 rebounds per game, but Austin Mangini for Navy, he's been able to give you 17 points, throws in there about 4 assists per contest for a Navy team that they do a nice job of being able to keep things clean. They only turn the ball over 10 times per contest, and even though Navy doesn't have the breadth of rebounding options that Boston U has, they've got the best low post player, Don Draper. 10 points, 9 boards, 2 steals per contest. I think the Navy does a good job being able to find a way to be able to hold in this one, and it's been a Navy team has gotten hot recently. Both of these teams have won 5 straight games. Navy has allowed 66 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Boston U team that all of a sudden has been able to get past the 67-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 as well, but they've been able to play some relatively solid defense as well. So I do think that this is going to be a game where scoring is going to be tight. Semi-total 130.5. Diving in on the under of Boston U. Set them as a 2.5-point favorite, so taking the points with Navy, and we wrap things up with 306. 577, 306, 578. It is Nichols. They are going to be on the road facing off against Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana, 3 to 3.5 point favorites. Your total on this game, 139.5 to semi total 137. I'm diving in on the under Southeast Louisiana, well outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game. And you do have a Southeast Louisiana team, though, that has been able to do a nice job of being able to get a pair of guys going with their versatility, and I'm going to be willing to lay it as a result with them. You've got 2 guys in Nick Caldwell, Roger McFarland, give you combined 30.5 points per contest. Caldwell shoots 42% from 3-point range. McFarland is able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. Going up against that Nichols team that is outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. Jamal West, Deontay Smith, they've been able to combine for about 30 points per contest. And Smith shoots 40% from 3. It gives you about 2 steals per contest as well. But for Nichols, the interior defense is going to doom them because they've actually done a really nice job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. Top 65 team in all of college basketball in that regard. And for Southeast Louisiana, on the road, they do allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from 3. At home, 31.7%. And I remember there was a time where Southeast Louisiana was about 275th in the country with that regard. So they are leaps and bounds better than that now. But this Nichols team just not generating turnovers the way that they did a season ago. And for Nichols, with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, even though they do have some sturdiness down low, they have been a team that's been well outside the top 200 with that regard as well. So I do think that's going to be a little bit of an issue. You've got someone like a Bowden Woodbury who's able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, and then you've got Rocco Eastmont who's done a nice job being able to dish out the ball for the Southeast Louisiana team. He's been able to give the team nearly 5.5 assists per contest. Not a guy that's necessarily going to take a lot of hold with regards to taking a bunch of threes or anything like that, but it is a Nichols team that, with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with them ranking about 210th in all of college basketball in that regard, I think that's going to be a little bit tough for them going up against a Southeast Louisiana team that's been able to rapidly improve with their offense as the season has went along. They've been able to now shoot about 35% from 3 points, while being a team that is in the top 125 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Nichols, credit where credit is due. They've now been able to get past the 68-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games, but they do have to go up against the Southeast Louisiana team that in regulation has now given up 67 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. So I did set my total 137, looking at the under of Southeast Louisiana. Want to lay up to 4.5 with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to our good friend Mike Randle over there at FDM Bets for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @JN_41. Keep in mind, Larry ZM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, and that means I'm coming at you with Steph. Thank you so much for tuning in.